Konnichiwa no minasamá, anata wa genki desu ka? Osuki no biohazard no shoujo Sabrina desu. Junbei o ii desu ka? Hey everyone, how's it going? It's your favorite Resident Evil girl, Sabrina here. And today we are going to be reading more of Code Veronica, the S.D. Perry novel. Where we left off last time, we were on chapter 5, and it takes place at Steve's point of view. So, pretty exciting thing. I'm pretty sure too, when we left off, they had pretty much completed most of, I don't know if they did the training facility, but they definitely did like the beginning area, whatever that, like the prison, and then they did the mansion. So pretty sure all they got left is just the training facility. So it's gonna be fun. Father! Hey Tom, how's it going? Welcome to stream. Pleasure to see you as always. Hey YouTube main, how's it going? Pleasure to see you as always. I've been practicing my voices, and I've gotten better with some, but I feel like I've gotten almost worse with others. So like I think I messed, like I don't know what it is, but like I somehow I messed up my Alexia voice. So whenever an Alexia part comes up, it's not gonna be good. I feel like I practiced like Alfred too much, so now when I go to do the Alexia voice, I accidentally do an Alfred voice, and it's like the struggles. It's like trying to balance so many, but I got better at Rodrigo, so. It is quite I mean, I could turn it up in like Windows, but then it'll have like a bunch of like noise and distortion and stuff. So it's like I could at cost of quality. But on like OBS and stuff, it's cranked all the way. I'm sorry. To be fair too, like I can get like closer to the mic when I read, like I usually do, so like maybe that'll help a little bit, but yeah. I'm sorry. Doing it with a book in the middle. Yeah, okay. So let's wait a minute for some more people to join, and then let me send out my links, and then we'll get started. Sometimes I get stuck doing one voice well at the cost of another. It's normal for that to happen. Oh, okay. That makes me feel a little bit better, because like I was just like I was so frustrated at the thought of that. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Oh yeah, so like it's something interesting that happened. So like when I set up the yeah, it can happen to me too, it's normal. Okay, good. So when I set up like OBS, I had it set to where I could hear like the RE5 music because I wanted to hear it. Like it's like nice and soothing. It's like great for starting a stream. And for some reason it just never plays. Like ever. For some reason it'll just never play. And Like, no matter what the settings are set to. But then randomly, it'll just happen. Like I'll have OBS open for, like, say, an hour, and then I'll just randomly start hearing the RE5 music. And I'm like, no way! And it's, like, super exciting. And when I started stream today, it started playing, so I just turned it all the way up. I was really enjoying it. So, yeah, I was just kind of jamming to it. Really cool if that happened. I feel like it's like a good luck charm type of thing, you know what I mean? Like, if I hear the music, if it like allows me to hear the music, I know it's gonna be a good stream. So I'm excited. With this starting off, and it's like, Steve is one of those voices where I feel like I have to warm up into. I can't just jump into a Steve voice. But this starts with Steve, so I'm gonna have to jump into a Steve voice. So I don't know how that's gonna go. But I'm gonna try. To be fair, actually, it doesn't even look like Steve talks. It's more of just his thoughts. Oh, wow, yeah. Okay, never mind then. I don't even have to really do any talking. Yeah. So it's good. Alright, I think we're all ready to go. Going from Steve to Wesker is gonna be crazy. Oh my god, trying to do, like, Okay, I put you on the TV instead with the volume at 100. I can hear you fine, but I better remember to turn it down. That'd be wild. Like, I couldn't imagine what, like, just like, if you, like the stream ends and you forget, and then you go to, like, watch something on TV, and it's just like, it's like that meme, like, it just blasts you fucking, like, backwards with, like, a shockwave of sound. Just, like, it, like, rips your face off. It'd be too great. I'll try and remind you at the end of stream to turn it down or something. Like, I don't know if I'll remember. I have a horrible memory, so, like, don't count on it. But I'll try, okay? I got you. Well. Yeah. I think that's all I really got to say before stream. Better have the mute button ready at hand. Oh my god, what if an advertisement happens? If you're, like, on a TV and you get an ad, that's gonna be blaring. That's a good point. Oh, jeez, I hope you don't get an ad. That's gonna be awful. I'm sorry, YouTube main. Also, this is your first hydration reminder. Make sure you get some water. Cheers with me. Okay. Oh yeah, I don't need my phone. Alright. Chapter 5. The alleged dock wasn't really a dock at all, much to Steve's disappointment, and there wasn't a boat in sight. He'd expected a long pier with pilings and seagulls, all that shit, and half a dozen ships to choose from, each of them stocked with full pantries and soft beds. Instead, he'd found a tiny, grungy platform that sat over an unpleasantly gray, lagoonish area, protected from the ocean by a ridge of jagged rock that he could barely make out in the dark. There was a pulpit kind of thing with a ship's steering wheel stuck on it at the edge of the platform. Probably some dumbass monument to the sea or whatever. A decrepit table with some trash on it, and a ratty, moldy old life jacket heaped in a corner. The once bright orange stained to a murky mustard color. Nothing bigger than a canoe was ever going to dock at this particular pier. In a word, lame. Great, so how did all those people get off the island? Backstroke? And if there's an airstrip, where the hell is it? Bad enough that now he had to find another escape. He'd also told Claire that he'd meet her here. He couldn't just take off, but he didn't want to stand around waiting either. You could still ditch her. Steve scowled, irritably kicking at a rusted-out hunk of random machinery. Maybe she was a little nosy, a little naive, but she'd saved his ass, no question, and her wanting to go back to help some wounded umbrella hand just because he'd set her free, that was, well, it was nice. It was a nice thing to do. Leaving her behind didn't seem right. Not sure what to do next, he walked over to the mounted steering wheel. Wasn't there some kind of sailor name for it? One of those port, starboard, ahoy words? He didn't know. And gave it a spin, surprised at how smoothly it turned considering how crappy the rest of the dock was. And with a low mechanical hum, the platform beneath his feet abruptly detached from the rest and slid out over the water as giant bubbles started to break the water's surface in front of him. Christ! Steve held onto the wheel with one hand, pointed at one of the gold lugers at the rising bubbles with the other. It wasn't one of Umbrella's creatures, it was about to be breathing hot lead. And a small submarine rose up out of the water like a dark metal fish, the hatch conveniently popping open directly in front of his feet. A rung ladder led down into the sub, which appeared to be empty. Unlike the worn-out surroundings, the little sub looked sturdy and well-maintained. Steve stared at it, astounded. What was this shit? It was like some theme park ride, so weird he wasn't sure what to think. Is it any weirder than anything else I've dealt with today? Point taken. The map he'd looked at back at the mansion had been vague, just a couple of arrows in the words dock and airstrip. And apparently you had to take a submarine ride to get there. Umbrella was one messed up company. He stepped down onto the top rung and then hesitated, his skin still red from the last unknown he'd stepped into. He didn't want to drown any more than he wanted to get baked alive. Ah, screw it. Won't know till you try. Again, point taken. Steve climbed down the ladder, and when he stepped off, he triggered a pressure plate in the floor of the sub. Above him, the hatch closed. He quickly stepped on it again, and the hatch reopened. It was good to know he wouldn't suffocate, at least. The interior of the submarine was very plain, maybe as big as a large bathroom, bisected by the narrow ladder. There was a small padded bench on one side, the rear of the sub, and a simple control console in front. Let's see what we got here, Steve muttered, stepping up to the controls. They were ridiculously simple, a single lever with two settings. The handle was currently next to the upper setting marked Main. The lower setting was marked Transport. And Steve grinned, amazed that it could be this easy. Talk about user-friendly. He tapped the pressure plate again, sealing the hatch, wondering if Claire would be impressed by his discovery as he pulled the lever down. He heard a soft metallic thunk, and then the submarine was moving, descending. There was a single porthole, but it was too dark to see anything besides a few rising bubbles. The anticlimactic ride was over in about 10 seconds. The sub seemed to stop moving, like he heard a sharper metallic sound coming from the hatch. Like it was brushing against something. Definitely not an underwater sound. Onward and upward. The hatch opened as he started to climb the ladder, gum firmly in hand, and he stepped out into a metal platform walled in glass or plexi, surrounded by black water on either side. There were a few steps leading down a well-lit hallway where only the left-hand wall was made of water. Yeesh, it was like the displays at some aquariums where he'd go through an underwater tunnel, look at the fish. He never liked those things, finding it way too easy to imagine the glass breaking just as a shark decided to cruise by. Or something worse. Enough of that. Steve stepped down into the hall and followed it around two bends, deliberately staring straight ahead. It was the first time since the attack on the island that he really felt nervous. Not so much the claustrophobia as kind of primal fear. That thing would come flashing out of the dark water toward the glass, an animal or something? A pale hand, perhaps? Or maybe a dead white face pressing against the window smiling at him. He couldn't help it. He broke into a run, and when the corridor met a door that apparently led away from the water room, he called himself Pussy, but was vastly relieved anyway. He pushed the door open and saw 2, 3, 4 zombies in all, and all of them suddenly quite eager for his company. Each of them turned and began to limp or stagger towards him, the rags of their clothing, umbrella uniforms no question, hanging from their outstretched arms. There was a smell like dead fish. One of them moaned, And the others chimed in, the wail strangely gentle in a way, kind of sad and lost sounding. Considering what Umbrella had put him through, he didn't feel a whole lot of sympathy. None, in fact. The room was half split by a wall, with 3 zombies on the left unable to see the Lone Ranger on the right. And maybe they could, he thought, peering closer. Each of the trio had eyes that seemed to glow, a strange dark red. They reminded him of a movie he'd seen once, about a man with super X-ray vision who saw all kinds of shit. Guess we'll never know what they see. Steve took aim at the nearest, closed one eye, and bam, right through the old frontal lobe, a clean hole, peering in its green forehead like magic. The creature's red eyes seemed to fade and go out as it dropped, first to its knees and then flat onto his face. Sploosh. Gross. The zombie's comrades took no notice and kept coming. The Lone Ranger's progress had been stopped by a desk. He continued to walk anyway, apparently not noticing that he wasn't going anywhere. Steve took out the next in line, same as the first, a one-shot kill, but for some reason he didn't feel all that great about it. Shooting him down like that, it hadn't bothered him before back at the prison. Then it had felt good, powerful even. He'd been struck in that hellhole for long enough to be pretty righteously pissed. And having some control again had been like Christmas, like a great big Christmas present that some little kid had been waiting for all year, like he used to wait. Shut up. Steve didn't want to think about it. It was bullshit. So he didn't feel like clapping every time he wasted another one of them. So what? All it meant was that he was getting bored. He hurriedly shot the last 2, the shots seeming louder than before, practically deafening. A quick look around for anything useful. If paper clips and dirty old coffee mugs were useful, he was sitting pretty. And he was ready to move on. There were 2 doors on the back wall, one on either side of the room. He picked left on general principles. He read somewhere that when given a choice, most people picked right. After checking his ammo, he walked past a big empty fish tank that dominated the left side of the room and cautiously pushed the door open, taking in as much as he could in a single glance. Dark, cadaverous smells of salt water and oil. Nothing moving. He stepped inside, sweeping with the Luger, and laughed out loud. A rush of pure joy washing through his system as his laugh echoed back at him. It was a seaplane hangar, and there was one big-ass seaplane sitting right in front of him. Big to him, anyway. He'd mostly flown little twin-engine private planes. Thoroughly pleased, Steve walked towards the plane, which sat just below the mesh platform under his feet. He was an inexperienced pilot, but he figured he probably knew enough not to crash the thing. First things first, board her and check fuel, general condition, and learn the controls. He stopped at the edge of the platform and looked down, frowning. He was at least 10 feet above the front hatch, which looked to be locked down tight. There was a bank of machinery to his left, a few panels lit up. Steve walked over and looked at them, smiling, when he saw the control to power up the boarding lift. The system should also open the plane door according to the tiny diagram. Presto, he said, flipping the switch. A loud grating mechanical noise bellowed through the giant hangar, making him wince, but it stopped after a few seconds as a 2-man lift slid to a halt at the platform's edge. He stepped onto the lift, studied the standing control panel, and started to curse, every bad word he could think of twice. Next to a trio of hexagonally shaped spaces were words, insert proof keys here. No keys, no power. They could be anywhere on the whole goddamn island. What are the chances that all the goddamn 3 of them will be goddamn together? He took a deep breath and made himself calm down a little. He spent the next few minutes figuring out how the plane's controls were hooked up to the rest of the system, looking for a way to bypass the keys. And after a careful, thoughtful deliberation, he started cursing again. When he finally got tired of that, he resigned himself to the inevitable. Steve turned around and started to search the area, peering into every dark crevice, formulating theories about where the proof keys might be as he ran his hands over the greasy, dust-slime machinery cabinets. And he decided that he was definitely going to dance all over the bones of the next Umbrella employee he gunned down, just for working at such an unnecessarily complicated place. Keys and emblems and proofs and submarines, it was a wonder they ever got shit done. The virus carrier was wearing a lab coat, and its lower jaw had fallen off somewhere, or been broken off. It gurgled and sputtered horribly, its wormy tongue flopping limply across its neck. Claire couldn't tell if it had been a man or a woman, although she supposed it didn't really matter. As pitiful as it was revolting, she put it out of its misery with a single shot to the temple and then searched the area. Working laboratory office, small inventory room, before stepping back into the hall, discouraged at her overwhelming lack of success. The entrance she'd walked back from the mansion had opened up into a reasonably big courtyard, hard-packed dirt and totally utilitarian. More like the prison than the palace, although even after searching a few rooms, she couldn't figure out where she was exactly.
Some kind of testing facility, maybe, or a training ground for guards or soldiers. Maybe just a building designed to destroy hope, she thought blackly, looking toward the front door. She'd walked in maybe 10 minutes ago, hoping that Rodrigo wasn't already dead, and Steve had found a boat, that Mr. Psycho Ashford and his sister weren't planning to blow up the island, and in just 10 minutes those hopes had been thoroughly stomped on. All she really wanted now was a goddamn bottle of medicine, because then she'd be one step closer to leaving. She tried the upstairs first, undergoing an exciting little adventure that had shaved a few years off her life. All she found up there was a small locked lab with a lot of broken glass on the floor, from what appeared to be ruptured holding tanks. She'd seen the damage through an observation window and had been about to leave when some poor bloody guy in an environmental suit threw himself at the glass. It had been his dying act. The suit obviously hadn't done much good. His head had practically exploded, coating the inside of his helmet with gore. It hadn't done her heart much good either, scaring her half to death, and the whole upstairs experience had been topped off by an emergency shutter lockdown, apparently triggered by the suit guy. She'd practically had to hurl herself down the stairs to avoid being trapped. Whee! 9 zombies she had put down so far, 3 of them in lab coats or scrubs, and not even a cotton swab to show for it. Nothing in the locker room, and she looked through practically every damn one of the lockers, turning up jock straps and porn, but little else. Nothing in the odd little shower room, zip and zilch. She'd have thought that a pharmaceutical company might actually have a few pharmaceuticals laying around, but it was looking more doubtful by the moment. Claire walked back to the long hall that branched off from the building's first floor that opened into an outdoor courtyard. She'd hoped to find something for Rodrigo without having to leave the building proper, but there was no help for it. If I get lost, I can just follow the trail of corpses back, she thought, walking quickly down the nondescript corridor. Not funny, but she wasn't feeling all that politically correct at the moment. She was starting to run low on ammo too, which made her even less inclined to a positive frame of mind. She stepped from the relative warmth of the hall into the mist-cloaked courtyard, smells of the ocean permeating in the cold gray night. A small fire burned against one wall. The whole Rockford facility was strangely laid out, she thought, an unlike mix of new and old. If inefficient, but interesting. The little courtyard was actually cobblestone, definitely not a recent addition. Claire froze. The narrow red beam of a laser scope sliced through the mist in front of her, swept toward her from somewhere above. A low balcony to her right, the stairs were set against the east wall. Stairs! Cover! It was all she had time to think before the little red dot was stuttering across her chest. She threw herself out of the way as the first shot blasted through the cold air, burying itself in a miniature fountain of stone chips. She rolled to her feet and sprinted for the stairs, the red light jerking back and forth trying to find her. Bam! A second shot. It missed, but was close enough that she could actually hear it cutting through the air, a high-pitched buzzing sound. She caught a glimpse of the shooter just before ducking behind the low stone balustrade, but not surprised at all to see the slicked-back blonde hair and a red jacket trimmed in gold. She was more angry than scared, and after all she'd been through, she hadn't been more careful, and that she'd almost been taken out by such a weird little elitist creep. That stops right now. Claire raised her handgun over the stone railing and fired off 2 rounds in Alfred's general direction. She was immediately rewarded with a cry of shocked outrage. Not so much fun when the peasants fire back, is it? Ready to capitalize on his surprise, Claire scrambled up the 3 steps and risked a look over the rail, just in time to see him run through a door on the west wall, slamming it behind him. She leaped up the stairs and took off after him, banging through the door and down a moonlit hall, shafts of cool light gently piercing the shadows. It wasn't a conscious decision to pursue him. She just did it, not wanting to stumble in any more of his ambushes. She could see what looked like a soda machine at the end of the hall, could still hear his running footsteps, and heard a door slam just before she reached the corridor's end. Small room with 2 decrepit vending machines and 2 doors to choose between. Claire hesitated, looking at either door, and then put her hands on her knees to catch her breath. Giving up the chase. For all she knew, he was standing on the other side of one of those doors, just waiting for her to walk through. Score 1 for the nutcase. Not a big victory, anyway. With any luck, she'd be off the island soon. Alfred Ashford, just another bad memory. After a moment, she straightened, walking over to check out the vending machines, one for snacks, the other beverages. She suddenly realized she was ravenous and incredibly thirsty. When was the last time she ate? The machines were both broken, but a couple of good, solid kicks circumvented the problem nicely. Most of it was crap, but there were several bags of mixed nuts and a few cans of orange juice. Not exactly a steak dinner, but considering the circumstances, a bountiful harvest anyway. She ate quickly, stuffing a few unopened bags in her vest pockets for later, feeling more focused almost immediately. So, door number 1 or door number 2? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. The gray door to the right of the corridor. She doubted that Alfred had the patience to still be waiting, but edged up to the door carefully just in case, pushing it open with the barrel of the 9mm. Claire relaxed. A small, cozy room, a couple of couches, an antique typewriter on the table, a large, dusty trunk in one corner. It seemed safe enough. Alfred must have gone through door number 1. She stepped inside to search it, drawn toward a small heap of miscellaneous objects on one of the couches. Her breath caught in her throat, her eyes widening. Thank you, Alfred. Someone had dumped the contents of a fanny pack on the couch. The pack itself crumpled next to the pile, which included 2 sterile needles and a syringe, a pack of waterproof matches, half a box of 9mm rounds, and a small, half-filled bottle of the same hemostatic stuff Rodrigo had been out of. Exactly what she'd been looking for. There were a few odds and ends in the makeshift survival kit, a pen, small flat screwdriver, a foil-wrapped condom, and at last she rolled her eyes, grinning. Interesting what some people considered absolute necessities. Her grin faded when she noticed the bloodstains on the pack, but she still felt better than she had in days. She reloaded the pack and strapped it low around her hips, transferring a few things over from her own woefully tight pockets. She could hardly believe her luck. The medicine was what she'd been most worried about, but there was also an incredible relief to find more ammo. Even a single clip's worth was a godsend. A search of the rest of the room yielded up nothing more, not that she minded. She felt like the end was in sight, an end to this terrible and horrific night. Get back to the prison, give the drugs to Rodrigo, then see if Steve's had any luck wrangling us a ride home, she thought happily, stepping out into the room. It had been a hard ride, but compared to Raccoon, this was a picnic. The heavy rattle of the closing shutter whipped her around. The moment of happiness blown as the corridor, her exit, was blocked off with a thundering crash. No! Claire ran to the metal shutter, banged it once with her fist, already knowing that there was no chance. She was sealed in, the only possibility of escape, now one door she hadn't tried yet, the one Alfred had fled through. Okay, this is Alfred talking. Welcome, Claire! A voice called out as snotty and pretentious as she remembered, in the same snide undertone as before. There was an intercom box above one of the vending machines in the upper corner of the room. Howdy, Alfred, she thought dismissively, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of her anger or fear. The whole compound was probably wired up for sound. She'd been stupid not to think of it, and just because she didn't see a camera, that didn't mean there wasn't one. You're about to enter a playground of sorts, Alfred continued, and there's a friend of mine I'd like very much for you to meet. I think you'll play well together. Fantastic, can't wait. Don't die too soon, Claire. I want to enjoy this. He laughed, that insane, annoying, distinctly unnatural giggle of his, and then he was gone. Claire stared blankly at the door that she was supposed to go through. Considering her options, it was probably the best thing Chris had ever taught her, that there were always options. They might all totally suck, but there was always a choice regardless. And thinking over her alternatives now had a calming effect. I can hide in the safe room, live on snack food and pop while I wait for Umbrella to show up. I can sit here and pray that some friendly party will miraculously come to my rescue. I can try to get through the steel shutter, or through one of the walls. With that screwdriver and some elbow grease, I can probably break out in about 10,000 years. I can kill myself, or I can walk through Alfred's playground door and see what there is to see. There were a number of variations, but she thought that basically summed things up. The only one of them made sense. Technically, none of them makes sense, part of her howled. I should be in my dorm room eating cold pizza and cramming for some test. Objection noted, she thought dryly, reaching into her new pack for a full clip, tucking another in her bra for fast access. Time to see what Alfred and his underlings had been up to out here, and see if Umbrella had finally come up with a formula for the perfect bioorganic warrior. Claire stepped up to the door and paused, wondering if she should go into battle with some profound thought about her life or love, wondering if she was ready to die, and decided that she could worry all about that stuff later. If there wasn't a later, she would have to worry about it. She wouldn't have to worry about it, would she? Boy, am I smart, she murmured, and then pushed the door open before she could lose her nerve. Okay. Now, comments. Yeah, so that was a pretty short chapter, I'd say, especially compared to some of these other ones. Oh crap, I hadn't considered that. Yeah, the ads. You got, oh, I'm so sorry, you got an ad. Was it like actually blaring like that? If so, I am so sorry. Hey princess, this is my username, Mr. Bum 1184. Well,
Oh, hello, how's it going? Pleasure to see you, as always. Alfred's laugh is lethal. I practiced Alfred's laugh because I thought I'd have to do it. And then every time he does it, she's just like, there's that laugh again. And it's like, no, come on, I practiced this. This isn't fair. You muted just in time. Oh, good, good, good. I'm very happy you did. That would have sucked. Try sending a request. Okay. I have no clue how bro hits that laugh. He must have made a deal with the devil or something. Maybe I'll do it for you guys in the Discord. Because, like, or if it doesn't come up in the book. Because, I think I got it down. But then again, I think I have Alexia's laugh down more than Alfred's. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Sometimes the two voices blend together. But let me do this real quick. This is another hydration reminder. Okay, man. I sent you a request. So, well, there you go. You got it. See, there you go. Yes, so that is a totally different profile than you originally joined the server with. That makes sense. That's why there was so much confusion. I totally get it. Cool. Okay. Get another drink of water. I heard that, like, room temperature water is better for, like, your throat when you're, like, speaking or reading or something. And, I'm just like, unless you have, like, water bottles, how would you get room temperature water? Because it comes out cold. Like, unless I get it from, like, the sink, but then it's not filtered, and I don't really trust South Carolina tap water, let's be real. I don't think anyone would. Not as bad as the Florida tap water, though. That was worse. That was some of the worst water. It even smelled. It was so bad. Gotta have it filtered. Okay. TV Sabrina is 12 seconds behind PC Sabrina. Really? That's funny. So are you, like, watching it on the PC and then, like, just listening to it through the TV? That's... That's interesting to think about. It's like you see me say it, and then 12 seconds later you hear it. Okay. Oh, wait, but then, like, how would you know that ad's about to, unless you just hear it stop. Like, if you just hear, like, the audio's, like, cut, you're like, oh, it's an ad, and then turn around, like, I assume anyway, like, say the TV's, like, behind you, and you're, like, you're facing your computer, so then as you're sitting there, then you hear it stop, and you're like, oh, and, like, turn around real quick to mute it. Just watching PC or chat. Oh, okay, okay. Alright, that makes way more sense. Apologies for the name of my username. I couldn't get stuff to get creative or anything, so I just went with that. It's okay. Yes, I get a black screen. Yeah. Okay. I kind of woke up with a sore throat this morning. I hope I'm not getting sick or something. That would suck. Being sick is just the worst, isn't it? You just feel gross. Like your whole body just feels gross. It's like the same. It's like the feeling as if you just like haven't showered, but it's inside. And like, all right, chapter 6. Everything was perfect. The cameras were set that we could watch from 4 different angles, all in full color. The battle arena, well lit, his chair comfortable. He only regretted that he hadn't come in time to return to their private residence to watch the entertainment with Alexia by his side, although he had turned out to be advantageous as well, a silver lining. The training facility's control room and cameras that could be re-angled with the touch of a button, ensuring the clearest possible view. Alfred smiled, watching as Claire hesitated at the door, quite pleased with how his plan had come to fruition. She chased him as he'd hoped, stepping into his trap with hardly a struggle. He hadn't expected her to actually fire at him, but that was easily overlooked in retrospect. And truly, it made the anticipation for her upcoming death all the sweeter, the addition of a personal revenge aspect into the mix. The OR-1, a highly developed BOW specifically created for field combat, was one of Alfred's all-time favorites. The AN-3 Sandworm was impressive, to be sure. The standard Hunter 121's lethal and fast, but the OR-1s were special. The human skeletal structure showed through, particularly in the face and torso, giving them the look of classic death. Their skull faces leered out beneath corded ropes of real and synthetic tendon, like a Neo-Grim Reaper. They weren't just dangerous the way they looked, those terror-inspiring, the most basic level instinct. The island employees had called them Bandersnatches, a nonsense word from some poem that was strangely fitting, considering their unique design and function. There were 30 of them at Rockford, half of those in stasis, although Alfred had only been able to account for 8 of them since the attack. Oh, Claire was opening the door. Elated, Alfred focused his full attention on the girl, his left hand on the camera controls, his right hovering over the lock functions for the storage areas. Claire stepped out on the balcony with a large, open 2-story bay with gun in hand, trying to look everywhere at once. Alfred zoomed in on her face, wanting to fully appreciate her fear, but was disappointed by her lack of expression. After surmising that she was in no immediate danger, she seemed watchful, no more. But when I pushed this button, Alfred snickered, unable to contain his excitement, lightly stroking his forefinger across the switches for Bay 2's shuttered storage closets, one on the balcony, one bordering the freight elevator on the lower floor. At his whim, Claire Redfield would die. True, she wasn't important. Her death was as meaningless as her life had surely been. But it was the control that mattered. His control. In the pain, the exquisite torture, the look in her eyes when she realizes that her existence is at its end. Alfred controlled his body as tightly as he controlled his life. He prided himself on his ability to dominate his sexual desires, to feel nothing unless he chose to. But just thinking of Claire's death inspired him in a passion that was beyond physical lust, beyond words, beyond even the simple scope of a man's awareness. Alexia knows, Alfred thought, certain that his beautiful sister was watching too, that she understood that could not be explained. In Claire's death, they would be as close as 2 people could ever be. It was the wonder of their relationship, the culmination of the Ashford legacy. He couldn't contain himself another moment. As Claire took another cautious step into the center of the room, he first locked the door she'd come through, sealing off her escape, and then pressed the button for the second-story shutter release. Instantly, the narrow metal shutter not 10 feet from where she stood slid open, and as Claire stumbled backward trying to distance herself from the unknown threat, a fully matured Bandersnatch stepped out, ready to engage. It was beautiful, the creature. Between 7 and 8 feet tall, its face was that of a grinning skeleton, its head set low and menacing. The disproportionately huge upper body supported its primary weapon, the right arm, as thick as one of its tree trunk legs, longer than half of its body, and full body length at rest. The hand span big enough to cover an ordinary man's entire chest. Its left arm was withered, tiny and misshapen, but a Bandersnatch only needed one.
Alfred had hoped for some exclamation from her, a curse or a scream, but she was silent as she retreated to what she believed to be a safe distance. She opened fire almost immediately. The Bandersnatch roared, threw a rough guttural scream, and then performed its trick. Alfred had seen it a dozen times, but never tired of watching. The massive right arm snapped towards Claire, probably 15 feet away, the engineered muscles hyperextending, the elastic tendons and ligaments stretching, and it slapped Claire to the ground with scarcely any effort. The girl knocked sprawling before the Bandersnatch's arm snapped back into place. Yes! Oh, yes! Claire crept backwards as fast as she could, stomping only when her back hit the wall. Alfred zoomed in to see a fine sheen of sweat had broken out across her face, but she still wore no expression beyond a kind of intense watchfulness. She pulled herself to her feet and sidestepped along the wall, moving fast, obviously not wanting to be knocked off the balcony by the creature's next blow. I just keep yawning, jeez. Alfred grinned, ignoring the disappointment that her apparent lack of terror had brought about. She'd be out of the wall in another few seconds, backed into a corner, and then a series of blows beating her to a death against the wall, or a simple neck snap, the grasp of her head in a single solid shake, or will it toy with her, tossing her around like one of Alexia's rag dolls? Alfred leaned in eagerly, changing the angle for one of the cameras, watching as the doomed girl raised her weapon, taking careful aim in spite of her hopeless position. Bam! The Bandersnatch shrieked even louder than the gunshot, shaking its head wildly, dark fluids rushing from its moving face. It sprayed the balcony walls with itcherous liquid, blood and other things, trying desperately to bring its arm up to protect or comfort its wound. It all happened so fast, so violently. It was like watching a fountain geyser suddenly explode from a still lake. The eyes! She went for its eyes! Bam! Claire shot again, and then again, and the Bandersnatch cried out in fury and new pain, still trying to grasp its own injured head as it stumbled around in a weaving circle. And then, to Alfred's shock, it collapsed to the floor, its writhings becoming less and less urgent, its scream becoming a hoarse, dying protest. Stunned with disbelief, Alfred could finally see an emotion on Claire's face. Pity. She moved a stand over the creature and shot once more, stilling it completely. And then she turned and walked towards the stairs as casually as she was walking away from the ladies' luncheon. No, 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 no! This was all wrong, but it wasn't over yet, not yet. Furious, he stabbed at the other switch, releasing the second creature from its enclosure, the shutter sliding open behind a stack of storage containers on the elevator level. You won't be so fortunate this time, he thought desperately. Still barely able to credit what he'd just seen, Claire had heard the second door open, but a stack of containers obscured her view, hiding the new menace. She was stopped at the foot of the stairs, holding herself very still, scanning for the exact source of the noise. The second Bandersnatch snapped out of its closet and casually reached up, grasping a large metal crate at the top of the 10-foot stack of them. It pulled itself up, seemingly without effort, and without Claire noticing, her attention too intently fixed on the shadowy corner opposite the stairs. The Bandersnatch reached down for her. Claire saw it coming at the last instant, too late to get out of its way. The creature wrapped its muscular fingers around her head and lifted her up, studying her as a cat studied a mouse. Or a rat, Alfred thought, some of his previously joy returning at the sight of the girl dropping her weapon and struggling to free herself, grasping at the OR-1's steel grip with panic hands. And Alfred's focus was broken at the sound of shattering glass somewhere off-screen. Someone was shooting, the sudden flurry of noise and activity making the Bandersnatch shriek, making it drop Claire. What's... The window, Alfred answered himself, watching in horror as the young prisoner Burnside threw himself into the camera shot, firing 2 handguns at once, blasting at the startled creature. Startled, then screaming in agony as Claire scooped up her weapon and joined the fray. The Bandersnatch tried to attack, its arm whipping out toward the new assailant, but it was driven back by the sheer number of rounds being pumped into its body, finally slumping against the storage container, dead. Without consciously deciding to do it, Alfred reached for the freight elevator's controls, part of him remembering there was at least one OR-1 below, as well as a number of virus carriers. The 2 youths stumbled as the floor beneath their feet began to go down, taking them to the basement of the training facility. There were no working cameras there, but enjoying their deaths was no longer Alfred's primary concern, not so long as they died. This can't be happening. The OR-1 should have dispatched Claire and her meddlesome friend effortlessly, but they were alive and his pets suffered and died. He tried to convince himself that the 2 would soon perish in the basement, which had been locked and isolated since the first viral leak. But suddenly, nothing seemed certain anymore. Alexia, Alfred whispered, feeling the blood drain from his face, feeling his being very flushed with shame. He had to make her see that it wasn't his fault, that his trap had worked perfectly, that the impossible had occurred, and he'd have to accept his subsequent coolness in her gaze, the undertone of disappointment in her sweet voice as she reassured him that she understood. The only thing that surpassed his shame was newfound hatred for Claire Retfield, burning brighter than 1,000 burning stars. No sacrifice was too great to secure her torment, hers and that of her shining knight. Until both had penitence in flesh and blood, Alfred would not rest. He swore it. "Steve, other side," Claire said the instant the freight elevator began to move. Steve nodded. Claire reloaded and Steve clambered up over two of the heavy crates, both levers raised. As if by silent agreement, neither of them spoke as the lift descended, both watching intently for what came next. "He saved my life," Claire thought wonderfully, watching grease-smeared wall tracks slide past, blood still screaming through her veins for when she'd realized she would die. And Steve Burnside, who she'd written off as a well-intentioned but troubled, barely competent blowhard, had kept that from happening. Though he may only have delayed the inevitable. She didn't know what Alfred had in mind now, but she wasn't looking forward to meeting any more of his friends. Two skull-faced, rubber band-armed freaks had been more than enough. She'd been incredibly lucky to get off with a couple bruises and a sore neck. Claire had expected the elevator to drop them into some sort of BOW holding area, but she was pleasantly disappointed. The massive lift simply came to a stop. There was only one exit that she could see, and although she harbored no illusions about how safe things would be on the other side of the door, it seemed like they were out of danger for the moment.
"Hey Claire, check it out."
Steve climbed back over the boxes, holding what could only be some kind of submachine gun. Boxy, dark, and deadly looking with an extended magazine.
"It was behind one of the crates,"
Steve said happily. He'd already stuck the gold Lugers in his belt.
9mm, just like the Lugers and the guard weapons. Oh, by the way, here.
He reached in one of his outside pockets on his camo pants and pulled out 3 clips for the M93R.
"I searched a couple of guards on the way back from the dock. I like the Lugers better, and now that I got this," he held up the new weapon, grinning, "I don't need the extra hardware. You can have the gun, too."
Claire gratefully accepted his clips and the weapon, not sure how to thank him for what he'd done, determined to try anyway. "Steve, if you hadn't showed up when you did..."
"Forget it," he said, shrugging. "We're even now."
"Well, thanks all the same," Claire said, smiling warmly. He smiled back, and she saw a flicker of real interest in his gaze, a sincerity that there is not quite different than his previous posturing. Not sure what to do about it, for him or for herself, she moved the conversation along. "I thought you were going to wait at the dock," she said.
"It wasn't really a dock,"
Steve said, and told her what happened since they had separated. The seaplane was terrific news. Having to deal with Umbrella's bizarre fetish yet again wasn't so terrific.
"And when I couldn't find them, I thought I'd wander over to see if you'd come across anything like that,"
he finished, shrugging again, working hard to look nonchalant.
"That's when I heard the shots. How about you? Anything interesting?"
"Besides meeting up with a couple of Umbrella's monsters, I mean. I'll say, do you know anything about Alfred Ashford?"
"Only that him and his sister are total fruitcakes," Steve said promptly, "and that the guards were scared of him."
I could tell, the way they were avoiding talking about him. He was sent his own assistant to the infirmary, I heard. There was some whacked-out doctor working there, I guess. A lot of prisoners got taken to the infirmary and never came back.
"Doesn't take a genius, you know."
Claire nodded, fascinated in spite of herself. "What about the sister?"
"I never heard much about her, except that she's some kind of shut-in," Steve said. "No one even knows what she looks like. I think her name is Alexia Alexandra, maybe? I don't know. Why?"
She filled him in on her encounters with Alfred, followed by a brief synopsis of where she'd been and what she'd found. When she mentioned that she had medication she'd been looking for, Steve scowled, and then blinked, his face clearly expressing a sudden change of heart.
"Maybe this Umbrella guy..."
"Rodrigo?" Claire interjected.
"Okay, whatever," Steve said impatiently. "Maybe he knows something about this proof key things. Like maybe where they are."
"Good idea. It would beat searching the island, wouldn't it?" Claire said. "You up for a trip back to the prison? Assuming we can get out of here, that is."
"Oh, I'll clear us a path," Steve said, not a trace of doubt in his voice. "You just leave that part to me."
Claire opened her mouth to comment on the pitfalls of overconfidence, particularly where Umbrella was concerned, and then closed it again. Maybe it was his belief in himself that had carried him this far, that by not accepting the possibility of defeat, he was assuring himself a win. Fine in theory, dangerous in practice. She'd been there to cover him, at least.
We were on the first floor of the training facility, he continued, which means we're in the basement now. I know from my...
Steve shook his head, flustered for some reason, but before she could ask about it, he continued on as if nothing had happened.
There's a boiler room and a sewer area. Basically, we can go that way,
he said, gesturing at the door. Claire decided not to point out that since it was the only door, she'd already come to that conclusion.
I'm right behind you. Stay close,
Steve said roughly, walking to the door and looking back over the shoulder, trying to look fierce, his jaw set and his eyes narrowed. Claire was torn between irritation and laughter, finally choosing to think of it as endearing. And then he was opening the door, and the reality of their situation came back to her, floating on the smell of gangrenous tissue. She stopped worrying about the little things, concentrating on the need to survive. What Steve knew about guns he could sum up in about 5 seconds, but he knew what he liked, and he decided immediately upon pulling the trigger of his newest find that it was the shit, hands down. He stepped out of the freight elevator ready to kick some rotten ass, and saw his opportunity less than 10 feet away. There were 5 of them in all, well, 5 in the shelves. Oh, 5.5 including the crawling mess on the floor by the shelves. And all he had to do was tap the trigger, and then he was trying like hell to keep the weapon from flying out of his hand. Bam, 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 bam. He swept the kicking gun left to right, releasing the trigger as the last zombie's Swiss cheese brain parted company with its Swiss cheese head. It was all over in just a few seconds, so fast that it seemed unreal, like he'd coughed in a building had blown up or something. Claire had taken care of the floor pizza during his sweep, and when he turned around triumphant, he was a little surprised to see that she wasn't smiling, until he thought about it for a second, and then he felt a little ashamed of himself. As far as he was concerned, they weren't really people anymore. He knew that if he were ever infected, he'd want someone to plug him, to keep him from hurting anyone else, not to mention granting him fast death rather than letting him rot on the hoof. But they were human ones. What happened to them was entirely shitty and unfair, no question. True, and maybe he should be more respectful, but on the other hand, the gun was extremely cool, and they were zombies. It was a touchy subject, not one that he was prepared to mess around with, but he decided that at least not to laugh in front of Claire. He didn't want her to think he was some bloodthirsty asshole. He pointed at the door ahead and to the right, fairly sure that they were heading in the right direction, at least roughly. The way he'd figured, they'd come out at least close to the front yard of the training facility. Claire nodded, and Steve led the way once again, pushing the door open and stepping through. They were standing at the top of a half flight of open stairs leading down into the boiler room. A room full of big, battered-looking, hissing machinery anyway. Steve didn't really know what a boiler looked like. There were 4 zombies milling around between them, and the steps leading in and out, and on the other side of the cold, hissing room. Steve raised the machine gun and was about to fire when Claire tapped his arm, moving to stand beside him. "Watch," she said, and pointed her 9mm at the zombie group. Not quite, he saw. She was aiming low at something, and then boom. And pow! Boom! 3 of the creatures went down, blackened and smoking. Behind them was left of a small, obviously combustible container, only jagged curls of splayed metal surrounded by a smudge of toxic smoke. The 4th zombie had been hit, but not as hard. Claire took it out with a single headshot before speaking again. "Saves ammo," she said simply, and brushed past him to walk down the steps. Steve followed, slightly awed by her, but playing it detached. Like he'd already thought of that. If there was one thing he knew about chicks, it was that they didn't like guys who mooned all over them acting goofy. "Not that I give a shit what she thinks about me," he told himself firmly. "She's just kinda cool is all." Claire reached the next door first and waited until he caught up and nodded that he was ready. As soon as she opened it, they both relaxed. He could see her shoulders loosen, and he felt his own heart beating again. A dark stone walkway, totally empty, open on one side. There was water running somewhere below and some kind of a narrow gate straight ahead, like an old-fashioned elevator door. "This is starting to seem a little too easy," Claire said softly.
"Yeah," Steve whispered back. "So much for Alfie Boy's evil playground stick."
Alfie Boy's evil playground shtick is crazy. They were about halfway across when they heard it echoing up from somewhere in the black running waters below, a strangely high, piercing trill, inhuman but not like an animal either. Whatever it sounded extremely pissed, and from the splashing noises it was coming closer. Steve was ready to start shooting, but Claire grabbed his arm and took off running, practically jerking him off his feet. They were at the lift in about 2 seconds, Claire ripping the gate aside and shoving him into a tiny elevator cab, jumping in after him and slamming the gate closed. Okay, geez, you don't... Sorry, just too much.
Okay, geez, you don't have to push.
Steve said, rubbing his arm indignantly. Sorry, she said, pushing an errant stand of her hair behind one ear, looking as rattled as they'd seen her get. It's just, I've heard that sound before. Hunters, I think they're called. Extremely bad news. There were a bunch of them loose in Raccoon. Steve smiled shakily, which suddenly made him want to put his arm around her or hold his hand or something, but he didn't. Brings up some bad memories, you know, she said. Raccoon was the place that had been blown up a few months ago, if he'd remembered right. Right before he'd come to Rockford, the town's own police chief had done it.
Did Umbrella have something to do with Raccoon?
Claire seemed surprised, but then smiled a little easier, turning her attention towards the elevator controls. Long story, I'll tell you when we get out of here. So, first floor?
Yeah,
Steve said, and then changed his mind.
Actually, we can go up to the second. That way we can go look out over the courtyard and see what I'll be up against.
You know, you're smarter than you look, Claire said teasingly, punching the button. Steve was trying to think of a witty comeback when the elevator came to a stop, and Claire opened the door. There was a shuttered lockdown door to the right, only they went left. The short hallway was empty. There was only one door in that direction too, but they were in luck. The knob turned when Claire tried it. Again, there were no surprises. The door opened up to a cramped wooden balcony, thick with dust, overlooking a big room full of junk. A rusted military jeep, stacks of grungy old oil drums, broken boxes, and the like. It seemed more like a storage shed than anything else. And though it was well lit, there were enough piles of crap that it was impossible to see if anyone was down there. There was, though. Steve could hear shuffling noises. He took a few steps to the left, trying to see the corner beneath the balcony, and Claire followed. The boards creaked and shifted beneath their steps. It doesn't seem too sturdy, Claire started, and then was cut off by a giant splintering crack, as pieces of the balcony floor flying up as both of them went down. Shit. Steve didn't even have time to tense for the impact. It was over so quick. He landed on his left side, jarring his shoulder, his left knee cracking against a random bit of wood. Almost immediately, a pyramid of empty barrels fell over him, clattering hollowly to the ground, and Steve heard a zombie's hungry wail. Claire? Steve said, crawling to his feet and turning, looking for her in the zombie. There she was, amid the barrels, still down, rubbing one ankle. Her handgun was about 10 feet away. Steve saw her eyes go wide and followed her gaze, a lone zombie teetering towards her, and all he could do was stare at it, his body suddenly a million miles away. Claire said something, but he couldn't hear her, too intent on the virus carrier. It had been a big man, leaning toward fat, but someone had blasted off part of its gut. The open, sticky belly wounds were seeping. The dark shirt made it even darker by the almost uniform layer of blood that had soaked the cloth. It was gray-faced and hollow-eyed, like all of them, and had either bitten through its tongue or had been eating it, its mouth was smeared with blood. Claire had said something else, but Steve was remembering something, a sudden vivid flash of memory so real that it was almost like reliving the experience. He'd been 4 or 5 years old when his parents had taken him to his first parade, a Thanksgiving parade. He was sitting on his father's shoulder, watching the clowns go by, surrounded by loud, shouting people, and he'd started to cry. He couldn't remember why. What he remembered was his father looking up at him, his eyes concerned and full of love. When he'd asked what was wrong, his voice was so familiar and well-loved that Steve had wrapped his tiny arms around his father's neck and hidden his face, still crying but knowing that he was safe, that no harm would come to him so long as father held him. Steve! Claire practically screaming his name, and he saw that the zombie was almost on top of her, its gray fingers closing around her vest, pulling up to its drooling, bloody mouth. Steve screamed too, opening fire, the thunder of bullets ripping into his father's face and body, tearing him away from Claire. He kept firing and kept screaming until his father lay still and the thunder had stopped, only dry clicks coming from the gun. And then Claire was touching his shoulder, turning him away as he called out for his father, weeping. They sat for a while. When he could speak, he told her about it, parts of it, his arms around his knees and the head down. He told her about his father, who had worked for Umbrella as a truck driver, who had been caught trying to steal a formula from one of their labs. He told her about his mother, who had been gunned down by a trio of Umbrella soldiers in their own home, lay choking and bloody on the dying living room floor when Steve came home from school. Men had taken them away and taken Steve and his father to Rockford.
I thought he was killed in the airstrike,
Steve said, wiping at his eyes.
I wanted to feel bad about it, I did, but I just kept thinking about Mom and how she looked. I didn't want him to die. I loved him too.
Saying it out loud made him start crying again. Claire's arm was around him, but he barely felt it, so sad that he thought he might die. He knew that he had to get up. He had to find the keys and go with Claire and to fly the plane, but none of that seemed important anymore. Claire had been mostly quiet, listening and holding him, but she stood up now and told him to stay where he was, that she'd be back soon and that they could leave. That was okay. It was good. He wanted to be alone. And he was more exhausted than he'd ever been in his life, so tired and heavy that he didn't want to move. Claire went away, and Steve decided he should go looking for the proof keys soon. Very soon, as soon as he stopped shaking.
Alright. Now is the chapter. Plasma cannon blasting a hole in the ozone ceiling. Wait, what? Hey Shiloh, how's it going? Welcome to stream. Pleasure to see you, as always. What is Alfred on? Claire was disappointed there weren't BOWs to fight. Damn. Yeah. Hey, we're okay. It's reading time. Hey Ben, how's it going? Pleasure to see you, as always. Alfie Boy's evil playground stick. Too much is happening in this one part. It was like I'm trying so hard to keep reading, and it just like it felt like it just back to back funny moments. Like, and then she, I don't know what it is with S.D. Perry and her like needing to say that she jacked him off his feet, but like there's other ways to say that. Like, why do you gotta say it like that? Oh, that's like at this point, this is book 6, not counting like, and there's a 0, so this is technically book 7, and in 7 books she couldn't think of another way to say that. Really? I don't know, man. That's on purpose. I don't care. If you keep doing something, it's on purpose. Does Steve say what sort of secrets his dad sold off exactly? No. Father! Poor Steve. Oh boy, I really hope the MA121s get out and jack me off my feet or something. That's what I'm saying. Like, why do you gotta say it like that? Oh, jeez. Oh, wait, this is still on the stream starting soon screen. You guys didn't say anything. Oh, man, that's awful. I can't believe that. I'm just gonna, close stream. Just fucking quit. I can't believe I just realized, like, it's because to be fair, I haven't looked at myself yet. And, like, normally when I'm talking to you guys or, like, streaming, I keep myself, like, almost right under the camera, so, like, I can, like, I'm, like, talking to myself. But, like, I haven't been doing that. I was, like, looking at, like, the comments and stuff like that and, like, other stuff. So, like, I never noticed that it was still on that screen. Man. How unprofessional. Whatever. That's what you guys are here for, right? For some silly Sabrina antics. I just managed to get back to the phone. I was enjoying the RE5 music. Me too. Like that's what I should have noticed, is because I was telling at the beginning of stream that I could actually hear the RE5 music this time, and I guess I just enjoyed it too much too. To be fair, my headphones are on the floor though, so like it's not like I could like hear it that well, I guess. I don't know. Alright. 2 chapters in and we just made it to the Code Veronica screen. Jesus Christ. I feel like Jake right now getting run over by the tank. Jesus Christ!
Alfie Boy's evil playground shtick. Just back to back goofiness. Oh yeah, and like that, there was that one sentence earlier in the chapter too, where Steve said "goddamn" in the same sentence 3 or 4 times, and he's just like, "This goddamn door with the goddamn thing, the goddamn." Just like, Steve, bro, chill. Alfred is killing me right now. Yeah. So wild. Absolutely wild. Getting all giddy over CCTV footage. Yeah. Well, I think it's funny that that he was just like Alexia's gonna comfort me, but she's gonna be like, I can just feel the disappointment in her voice, and it's just like, damn. like like the way he describes it is just so awful. Just like, she'll comfort me, but she'll be, but like it's like what he was trying to say is that she'll comfort him, but she'll low-key hate him for it. Like, and just be like, yeah, okay, Alfred, you did what you could, buddy. Just like, it's like, damn. A beautiful woman is also compassionate. The two are mutually exclusive. That's my words of wisdom. Yeah, I mean, come on, where was his laugh during the footage? Also, did Steve not scream father? I just realized that. It just said he screamed, it didn't say what he screamed. They should have definitely had the father like in there. That would have been too perfect. Also, I apologize for the Steve voice. With my sore throat, it's a lot harder to do that, like, nasally, like, father! So it's like, yeah. I'm trying to drink more water to, like, try and compensate for it, maybe, but no. I should take some kind of medicine for it, to be honest. I like how he validates his actions by saying Alexia would agree, then literally becomes Alexia in his head and agrees with himself. Yeah, right. Well, I wish I could have that kind of logic. Then, like, if I could comfort myself like that, like, oh, I'd be unstoppable. I'd be like, is this video good? And then like transform into like a viewer and be like, yeah, this is the best video I've ever seen. And I'm like, oh, thank you, random viewer. You're awesome. You make me feel so much better. It's okay, it's okay, Sabrina, that you didn't move to the Code Veronica screen until 2 chapters in. It's okay, and no one can. It's like everyone's enjoying the reading regardless. Like, oh, thank you, random viewer. That makes me feel so much better. I'm such a genius. Yes, brother, you're so smart. Why, thank you. Exactly. It's too great. Oh, gosh. Honestly, I'm gonna pee real quick before we continue. So I'll be right back, you guys. YouTube main, look out, I'm about to hit the ad button. So if you get one, I just want you to be ready. Yeah, actually.
Eat some honey to help your throat. Voice actors eat honey. Oh, that's a good idea. Should I do it now, or should I do it, like, at the end of the thing? Alfred watched Fight Club once and decided that this is what Ashford fam is about now. Alright. See, this is why I drink a Monster every time I stream, because I just can't stop yawning. It's like, I can't avoid it. Especially while reading for some reason. I do the same thing when I read, like, notes in RE or something. Like, every time I go to read a note that's more than, like, a page long, I yawn for some reason. Like, it's pretty goofy. Oh! Yeah! That's what I'm talking about! In the cool darkness, Rodrigo has been resting uneasily. Now he heard a noise outside the corridor and forced himself to open his eyes to get ready. He lifted his weapon, bracing his wrist on the desk when he realized he hadn't the strength to hold it up. I'll kill anyone that messes with me, he thought, even more by habit than anything else. Glad he had the gun even if he was already a dead man. A zombie guard had fallen down the stairs and crawled into the cell room sometime after the girl had left, but Rodrigo had killed it with a boot to the head and taken its weapon, still holstered on its broken hip. He waited, wishing he could go back to sleep, trying to stay alert. The gun eased his mind, took away a lot of his fear. He's gonna die soon, it was inevitable, but he didn't want to become one of them. No matter what. Suicide was supposed to be a particularly awful sin, but he also knew that if he couldn't manage to wipe out the approaching virus carrier, he'd eat a bullet before it let it touch him. He was probably going to hell anyway. Footsteps, and someone was walking into the room, too fast. A zombie? His senses weren't working right. He couldn't tell if things were speeding up or if he was slowing down, but he knew he had to shoot soon or he'd miss his chance. Suddenly, a light, small but penetrating, and there she was, standing in front of him like some dream. The Redfield girl, alive, holding a lighter up in the air. She left it burning, set it on the desk like a tiny lantern. "What are you doing here?" Rodrigo mumbled, but she was rummaging through a pack at her waist, not looking at him. He let the heavy gun drop from his fingers, closing his eyes for a second, or a moment. When he opened them again, she was reaching for his arm, a syringe in one hand. "It's hemostatic medicine," she said, her hands and voice soft, the prick of the needle small and quick. "Don't worry, you won't OD or anything. Somebody wrote dosage numbers on the back of the bottle. It says it'll slow down any internal bleeding, so you should be okay until help arrives. I'll leave the lighter here. My brother gave it to me. It's good luck." As she spoke, Rodrigo concentrated on waking up, on overcoming the apathy that had taken him over. What she was telling him didn't make sense. Because he'd let her go, she was gone. Why would she come back to help him? Because I let her go. The realization touched him, flooded him with feelings of shame and gratitude. You're very kind," he whispered, wishing there was something he could do for her, something he could say that would repay her for her compassion. He searched his memories, rumors and facts about the island. Maybe she can escape. "The guillotine," he said, blinking up at her, trying not to slur his words too badly. "The infirmary's behind it. Keys in my pocket. Supposed to be secrets there." "He knows things. Puzzle pieces. You know where's the guillotine?" Claire nodded. "Yes, thank you, Rodrigo. That helps me a lot. You rest now, okay?" She reached out and stroked his hair back from his forehead. A simple gesture, but so sweet. So nice. He wanted to weep. "Rest," she said again as he closed his eyes, calmer and more at peace than he'd ever felt in his life. His last thought before he drifted off was that if she could forgive him after the things he'd done, show him such mercy as if he deserved it, maybe he wouldn't go to hell after all. I'm sorry, I got it, like, just because that was, like, it was so touching. I love Rodrigo so much, and that was, like, she gave him, like, the perfect, like, thing to go back to sleep, and that was just so sweet.
Yeah, that was just too perfect. Rodrigo had been right about the secrets. Claire stood at the end of the hidden basement corridor, steeling herself to the open, unmarked door in front of her. The infirmary itself was small and unpleasant, not at all what she would have expected for an umbrella clinic. No medical equipment to be seen, nothing modern at all. There was only a single examination table in the front room, the splintery wooden floor around it stained with blood, a tray of medieval-looking tools nearby. The adjoining room had been burned beyond recognition. She couldn't tell what purpose it had served, but it looked like a cross between a recovery room and a crematorium. It smelled like one, too. There was a tiny, cluttered office just off the first room. A lone body sprawled in front of it, a man in a stained lab coat who had died with a look of horror on his narrow, ashen face. He didn't appear to have been infected, and since there was no virus carriers in the room and no obvious wound, she'd guessed that he'd had a heart attack or something like it. The contorted expression on his pinched features, bulging eyes, and gaping, downturned mouth suggested to her that he died of fright. Claire carefully stepped over him and found the first secret in the small office almost by accident. Her boot had nudged something when she walked in, a marble or stone that had rolled across the floor, which had turned out to be the most unusual key. It was a glass eye, one that belonged in a grotesque plastic face of the office anatomical dummy, propped leering in the corner. Considering what Steve had said about no one coming back from the infirmary, and considering what she already knew about the kind of insanity that Umbrella seemed to attract, Claire wasn't surprised to find a hidden passage behind the office wall. A worn set of stone steps were revealed, and when she'd placed the eye back where it belonged, which hadn't really surprised her either, it was a trick, and Umbrella was all about secrets and tricks. So open the door already, get it over with. Right. She didn't have all day. She didn't want to leave Steve alone for too long either. She was worried about him. He had to kill his own father. She couldn't imagine the kind of psychological damage that would do to someone. Claire shook her head, irritated with her own dawdling. If it didn't matter, it didn't matter that she was in a barren, frightening place where lots of people had apparently died, where she could feel the pervasive atmosphere, the terror emanating from the cold walls, trying to wrap around her like a burial shroud. Doesn't matter, she said and opened the door. Immediately, three stumbling virus carriers started for her, drawing her attention, keeping her from really seeing the details of the large room they'd been trapped in. All three were badly disfigured, missing limbs and long ragged strips of skin, their putrefying flesh flawed and raw. They moved slowly, painfully dragging themselves toward her, and she could see the older scars on the exposed and rotting tissue. Even as she targeted the first, the knot of dread in her stomach was expanding, making her feel sick. It was over quickly, at least, but the terrible suspicion that had been growing in her mind, that she'd been hoping was false, was confirmed. With a single good look around. Oh, Jesus. The room was strangely elegant, the muted lighting coming from a hanging chandelier. The floor was tiled with a runner of finely woven carpet leading from the door to the kind of sitting area on the other side of the room. There was an understuffed valet chair in cherry wood and end table there, the chair facing out so that someone sitting there would be able to see the entire room. Which... they got the cuck chair, that's crazy. Which is worse than she could have imagined, worse than the Mad Chief Irons dungeon hidden beneath the streets of Raccoon. There were two custom-built water wells, one with a pillory built into a rail, a steel cage suspended over the other. Chains hung from the walls, some with well-used manacles attached, some with leather collars, some with hooks. There were a few elaborate devices that she didn't look at too closely, things with gears and metal spikes. Swallowing back bile, Claire focused on the sitting area. The elegance of the furnishings of the room itself made things worse somehow, adding a touch of warped ego to the obvious psychosis of its creator. Like it wasn't enough to enjoy torturing people. He or she wanted to observe it in luxury, like some mad aristocrat. She saw a book on the end table and walked over to retrieve it, keeping her gaze fixed straight ahead. Fire, zombies, and monsters and useless death were all horrible things, tragic or frightening or both, but the kind of sickness represented by the chains and devices all around her was appalling to her very soul, because it made her want to give up her faith in humanity. The book was actually a journal, leather-bound with thick, high-quality paper. The inner cover proclaimed that it was the property of Dr. Enoch Stroker, no title or inscription otherwise. He knows things, puzzle pieces. Claire didn't want to touch the thing, let alone read it, but Rodrigo had seemed to think it might help. She flipped through a few pages, saw that nothing was dated, and started scanning the narrow, spidery writing for a familiar word or name. Something about puzzles, maybe? There an entry that made several references to Alfred Ashford. She took a deep breath and started at the top. We finally talked today about the details of my preferences and pleasures. Mr. Ashford wouldn't share his own, but he was most encouraging to me as he's been since my arrival 6 weeks ago. He was informed at the beginning that my needs are unconventional, but now he knows everything, even the small things. I was uncomfortable at first, but Mr. Alfred, he insists I call him Alfred, proved to be an eager audience. He said that he and his sister both strongly approve of research and the boundaries of experience. He told me that I should think of them as kindred spirits, and that here I am free. It was a strange describing aloud my feelings, sensations, and thoughts that I thought I never shared. I told him about how it all started, when I was still a boy, about the animals I experimented with early on and later, the other children. I didn't know that I was capable of killing, but I knew that the sight of blood excited me, that causing pain filled an empty, lonely space inside with profound feelings of power and control. I think he understands about the screaming, about how important the screaming is to me, and enough. This wasn't what she was looking for, and it was making her want to vomit. She turned a few pages, found another entry about Alfred and his sister, scanned over something about a private home, and went back, frowning. Alfred attended one of my live autopsies today. He told me afterward that Alexia has asked after me, and that she wants to know if I have everything I need. Alfred worships Alexia, and I will let no one near her. I haven't asked to meet her yet, and I have no plans to do so. Alfred wants their private home to remain private, and to keep her all to himself. It's behind the common mansion, he told me. Most people don't even know it exists. Alfred tells me things that no one else knows. I think he appreciates having an acquaintance with common interests. He said that Rockford has many places that require unusual keys, much like the eye he gave me, some new, some very old. Edward Ashford, Alfred's grandfather, was apparently obsessed with secrecy, an obsession shared by Umbrella's other founder, according to Alfred. He and Alexia were the only people alive who know all the hidden places at Rockford, he said. Alfred had full sets of keys made for both of them when he took over his father's position. I joked that it's good to have a spare in case he ever locks himself out, and he laughed. He said that Alexia would always let him in. I believe that twins often have a much deeper bond than other sets of siblings. That in a figurative sense, if you cut one, the other will bleed. I'd like to very much test this theory in a more literal way regarding pain levels. I found that filling a fresh wound with cut glass and sewing it closed again is a... Sickened, Claire tossed the book aside and wiped her hands on her jeans, deciding that she had enough information to go on. She'd hoped quite sincerely that the corpse upstairs was Dr. Stoker's, that his black heart had failed him, and the thought of going to hell had frozen his face into a mask of terror. She abruptly realized that she had more than enough of his atmosphere. If she had to be in the infirmary for one more minute, she was going to throw up. She turned and walked quickly to the door, was full on running by the time she reached the stairs. She took them two at a time and sprinted through the upstairs room, not looking at the body, not thinking about anything but the need to get out. When she hit the outside path that led back to the guillotine door, she collapsed against one wall and breathed in huge lungfuls of air, concentrating on keeping her gorge down. It took a couple of minutes before she was out of the danger zone. When she felt ready, Claire plugged a fresh clip into her semi and started back towards the training facility. She realized that she lost the second weapon Steve gave her somewhere between the torture chamber and the front door, but there was nothing on earth that would persuade her to step back foot inside. She was going to get Steve, and they would find those goddamn keys, and they were getting the fuck away from the asylum that Umbrella had created at Rockford. Steve cried for a while and rocked himself back and forth for a while, dully aware that he'd just done a very big thing. As far as lifetime experiences went, there was a small shit, and then a big, and then a capital B big. There were some things that just changed people forever, and this was one of them. He had to kill his own father. Both his parents, good people who meant no harm, were dead. That meant there was no one in the world who loved him now, and it was that thought that kept repeating itself, making him cry back and rock back and forth. I was thinking about the Lugers that had finally snapped him out of his private emotional hell he was in, that made him remember where he was and what was happening. He felt entirely terrible, aching inside and out, but he started to tune back into his environment, wishing that Claire was with him, wishing for a glass of water. The Lugers. Steve rubbed at his swollen eyes and pulled them both from under his belt, staring down at them. It was stupid, unimportant, but somewhere in the back of his mind he'd finally connected that when he'd taken the matched handguns off the wall, that was when he had been locked in and the heat had gone on. It had been a trap, and as far as he could figure, the only purpose of the trap was to keep someone from taking the weapons, which means they're useful for something besides shooting. Yeah, they were gilded and cool looking and probably expensive, but the Ashfords obviously weren't hurting for money. And if the guns had some kind of sentimental value, they were being used as part of a trap. He decided that he wanted to go back and take a closer look at where they'd been hanging, see if putting them back did anything. It was a 2-minute walk back to the mansion tops. He could be there back in 5. Claire would wait for him if she got back first. And if I stay here, I'll just keep crying. He wanted and needed something to do. Steve stood up, feeling shaky and kind of hollow as he brushed dirt off his pants, unable to avoid looking over at where his father had died. He felt a rush of relief when he saw that Claire had covered him up with some piece of tarp. She was a great girl, though for some reason he suddenly felt kind of weird about her, about telling her all that stuff. He wasn't sure how he felt. He stepped outside and was vaguely surprised to see that he wasn't in the front yard of the training facility. He was also vaguely surprised at the small, high-walled square he had walked into what appeared to be a WW2 Sherman tank. Giant mud-crusted treads revolving with a turret with a huge gun, the whole deal. He might have been interested earlier, or at least more than just a little surprised. There was no reason at all for there to be a tank at the Rockford facility, but now all he wanted to do was check out the Luger trap and see if he could at least contribute something toward getting them off the island. He felt kind of bad that Claire had been stuck with questioning the wounded umbrella guy by herself, since it was his idea and all. On the other side of the tank was a door that slid open into the training yard. At least his sense of direction wasn't totally blown. It seemed darker than it had earlier. Steve looked up and saw that the sky had gone cloudy again, blocking the moon and the stars. He was about halfway across the yard when he heard thunder, loud enough that the very ground seemed to shake a little beneath his feet. By the time he reached the side, it started to rain again. Steve stepped up the pace, hanging a right at the exit and jogging for the mansion. The rain was heavy and cold, but he welcomed it, opening his mouth and turning his face to the sky, letting it wash over him. He was soaked in just a few seconds. "Steve?" "Claire." He felt his stomach knot up a little, turning to watch her approach. She caught up to him outside the door of the mansion's grounds, wearing a concerned expression. "Are you all right?" she asked, studying him, uncertainly blinking rain out of her eyes. Steve wanted to tell her that he was aces, but he'd shaken off the worst of it and was ready to get back to the zombie smackdown, but when he opened his mouth, none of that came out. "I don't think so." I think so?" he said truthfully. He managed half a smile, not wanting her to worry too much, but not wanting her to talk about it either. She seemed to understand, swiftly changing the topic. "I found out about the Ashford twins have a private house hidden behind the mansion," she said. "I'm not 100% sure, but the keys we're looking for might be there. I think it's a good chance." "You found all that from the, Rodrigo?" Steve asked doubtfully. It was hard to imagine that an umbrella employee would give that up to the enemy. Claire hesitated and nodded, in a roundabout way, she said, and he suddenly had the impression that there was something she didn't want to talk about. And he didn't push it, just waited. "The problem is getting to the house," she continued. "I'm sure it's locked up tight. I was thinking we might poke around the mansion a little more, see if we can find a map or a passage." She pushed her dripping bangs out of her eyes, smiling. "And get out of the rain before we get wet." Steve agreed. They went through the entrance to the manicured grounds, stepping over a couple corpses along the way. He filled her in on the idea about the Lugers, which she thought they should definitely pursue, although she pointed out that with the Ashford family running the island, Umbrella's cute little puzzles didn't necessarily need to be logical. They stopped at the front door to do what they could about their clothes, which turned out to be not much. Both of them were drenched, though they did their best to squeeze out the excess. Fortunately for both of them, their feet had stayed dry. Wet clothes were a pain in the ass, but trying to get around in squelching boots seriously sucked the root. Weapons up, Steve pushed the door open, shivering. They stepped inside, and heard a door close upstairs and to the right. "Alfred." "Alfred," Steve said, keeping his voice low.
"Bet your money. What say we put a few holes in his sorry ass?"
He started for the stairs, the question rhetorical. That loony crap hound needed to be dead for more reasons than Steve could count. Claire had caught up to him, put a hand on his shoulder. "Listen, some of the stuff I found back at the prison, he's not just crazy, he's seriously deranged, like serial killer deranged."
"Yeah, I got that," Steve said. "All the more reason to take him out ASAP."
"Just, let's be careful, okay?" Claire seemed worried, and Steve felt protective all of a sudden, big time. Oh yeah, he's going down, he thought grimly, but nodded for Claire's sake.
"You got it."
They moved quickly up the stairs, stopping outside the door they heard close. Steve stepped ahead of Claire, who cocked an eyebrow but said nothing.
"On 3.
he whispered, turning the knob very slowly, relieved that it was unlocked. 1, 2, 3. And sweeping with the machine pistol ready to shoot, they're the first thing that moved, but nothing did. The room, a softly lit office lined with bookshelves, was empty. Claire had gone in and turned left, past a couch and coffee table on the north wall. Disappointed, Steve stepped out after, expecting another door to another wall. So sick of the stupid mazes all over this place, he could just shit. And stopped and stared exactly what Claire was doing. Perhaps 10 feet away was a wall, a dead end, with 2 empty spaces set in a plaque about a chest level, indentation shaped like Luger's. Steve felt a rush of adrenaline, of victory. He had no rational reason to believe that they'd just found the way to the Ashford's private residence, but he believed they had, anyway, so it seemed, had Claire. I think we've got it, she said softly.
Bet your money.
Bet your money. Oh gosh. I don't know the I don't know the extract time. No, you meant to say exact time to eat the honey. I forgot when they do it. The white boys need to stop messing around and research what monster flavor each RE character represents. The white boys. Oh, funny. It's so funny. To be fair, alright, hold on, let me peek. What are you doing here? Really, you like the Rodrigo? Thank you. I was the one I was practicing the most. So, like, it's so hard to, like, try and talk that, like, deep. I have to, like, put my head back and, like, try and bring my voice, like, down here. Just, like, what are you? I can't even do it right now because I'm laughing, but, yeah, you know what I mean. Thank you. What a legend. I feel like it makes up for the worst Steve voice this time. Yeah, he really is a legend. He got messed up. He should rest. I like how, like, every part from Rodrigo's point of view is just, like, the most intense, like, thing ever. Like, he, like, I don't remember exactly, like, word for word what it was, but he was just, like, pretty much he summed it up as just, like, I'm gonna die alone and rot in hell and stuff. It's like, God, Rodrigo, chill, man. So that's why it like touched me so much that like that exchange was so wholesome with Claire, because it's like it turned his thoughts from thinking of like his demise and like how much he doesn't deserve a sweet death, and that he might as well go, he's going to hell anyway, so he might as well kill himself. And then Claire comes in, like, brushes his hair out of his face, gives him some medicine, and he's just like, all right, we're going back to sleep. He's like, you know what? I'm comfy. We're good. Isn't the doc the strongest zombie in Code Veronica or something? Yeah, he is. Yeah, definitely. They're only just now finding their way to the manor. Interesting. See, that I was going to talk about. So, when I do a run of Code Veronica, this is the point in time where I'd be going to the manor. So, like, they're actually following, like, the exact same path I take when I play the game. So. The only thing is, as Claire, I would have taken out the worm first. But I guess Claire doesn't encounter the worm, maybe. Maybe it's only Chris or something. Rodrigo's wound went so deep, it touched Rose's soul. Yeah, exactly. Definitely. Yeah, I'll definitely get some honey after. Like, I'll try and eat some honey after stream. Because it's 8 o'clock now, so like we only got like another hour and a half, something like that. I don't, with my throat, honestly, I don't know if I'll do more than like, I mean, I don't know how long this next chapter is, but let me look. Not bad. About chapter 9. Oh, that was there. Okay, so I don't want to go that far yet. We'll save that for next stream. See, I want to get through at least that. Alright, yeah, so if we stop at chapter 10. That'll be at the Antarctic facility. How far in does Chris show up? I know it's not much further from here. If you want to avoid the bats at the manor, it's better to go before helping Rodriguez. He had the lighter. Yeah, I remember when we were talking about that. But that doesn't mean I've ever done it. It shows us how much of a conscience Rodrigo has. He's not a cold bastard. I get it. It's like Rodrigo is a true man. Dang, autocorrect ruining my words. You know what's the worst? When you use the correct form of there, but your autocorrect changes it to like one of the other forms, and you're like, hold on, now I look stupid. Like, why did you do that to me? That's happened to me twice now. Like, only recently, like probably this year. But like, it happened twice, which is like really annoying. And I know it's just because they, like, depending on what keyboard you use, I use Swift key, for example, because I like the customization on it. And what they did recently was they integrated AI into their spell check and some of the other parts of the keyboard. So now the spell check is absolutely atrocious. It is so bad. I remember there was something I was saying, and it changed it because it just like all it did, like, because it takes all these errors that people make all the time, it learns from it, and then tries to correct your thing with those errors. It's like a huge problem right now in like those kinds of spaces. And yeah, so like it's yeah, there's like some sayings and stuff that like people will get wrong all the time that'll try to correct too when it's not correct. So awful having the need to try and integrate AI into everything, especially when it's so flawed. Like autocorrect, man, that already worked. Like yeah, sometimes it'd say ducking or something like that if you had like an iPhone. Like, cool, I get it. But, like, is it worth it? Is it worth this? No, it was not. It was never worth it. You could just change the letter. But when it's changing, like, more detrimental things, it's just... You get it. You get what I'm saying. Okay. Well, so chapter 8's pretty long. And I would want to finish chapter 9 because it's, you know, it'll be a good conclusion for tonight. So we still got a little ways to go. Alright. drink some water and we'll get started. Oh, wow, wow, Claire thought. Wow, Steve whispered, and she nodded, feeling entirely out of her depth as she took in her new environment. Had she said serial killer crazy? More like serial killer convention. There had been another puzzle after Lugers had opened the wall, having to do with numbers and a blocked passage. They'd ignored it completely, with both of them pushing. The passage wasn't blocked for long. Outside once again... See, I hate it when they do that. It's like Jill breaking the glass in that one puzzle. It's just like, that's so fucking lazy. Like oh yeah, she didn't even bother with the clock thing because her and Steve just pushed it. Like, alright, man, whatever. Outside once again, they could see the private house, peered on a low hill like some brooding vulture in the pouring rain. It was a mansion, really. Nothing like the one they just left. It was much, much older, darker, surrounded by the decrepit ruins of what had once been some kind of a sculpture garden. Stone cherubs with blind eyes and broken fingers watched and wend their way through the house. Gargoyles with eroding wings, shattered pieces of marble underfoot. Creepy, definitely. But it's just so far beyond creepy, it's not even in the same category. They stood in the foyer, unlit but for a few strategically placed candles. There was a smell of must in the air, an old smell like dust and crumbling parchment. The floor was plushly carpeted, and what they could see of it, it was so ancient that it had been worn threadbare in many places. It was hard to make out any color beyond dark. What had once been a grand staircase was directly in front of them, sweeping up to a second and third floor balconies. There was a still kind of shabby elegance to its time-blackened banisters and sagging steps, as there was a dusty library to the right, and the faded, ornately framed oil paintings hanging from the flocked walls. The word haunted would have described it perfectly, except for the dolls. Tiny faces stared out at them from every corner, china dolls of fragile porcelain, many of them chipped or discolored, dressed for high tea and water-stained taffeta. Plastic children with roll-open plastic eyes and pursed pink mouths. Rag dolls with strange button faces, bits of stuff poking out of withered limbs. There were jumbled piles of them, stacks of them, even a few featureless cloth babies impaled on sticks. There was no sane order to the placement that Claire could see. Steve nudged her, pointing up. For just a second, Claire thought she was looking at Alexia, hanging from the eaves. But of course it was another doll, life-size, this one dressed for her bizarre lynching. In a simple party dress, a flowered hem floating around her slender synthetic ankles. Maybe we should... Claire started and froze, listening. The sound of someone talking filtered down from upstairs, a woman's voice. It sounded irate, and the cadence of her speech rapid and harsh. Alexia? The angry voice was followed by a kind of pleading, whining tone which Claire immediately recognized as Alfred's. "Let's drop in for a chat," Steve whispered, and without waiting for a response, he headed for the stairs. Claire hurried after him, not at all sure it was a good idea, but not wanting to let him go alone either. The dolls watched them ascend in silence, staring after them with lifeless eyes, keeping their vigil on their peace as they had for many years. Alfred never felt closer to Alexia than when they were together in their private rooms, where they laughed and played as children. He felt so close to her now, but it was also deeply distraught by anger, wanting desperately to make her happy again. It was his fault, after all, that she was upset. And I don't... Oh, I can't do her voice right now. And I simply don't understand why this Claire person and her friend are proving to be such a trial for you, Alexia said in spite of his shame. He couldn't stop watching her with adoring eyes as she gracefully swept across the room in her silken gown. His tone was breathtakingly refined in her displeasure. "I won't fail you again, Alexia, I promise." "That's right you won't," she said sharply, "because I intend to take care of this matter myself." Alfred was aghast. "No, you mustn't risk yourself, darling. I won't allow for it." Alexia glared at him for a moment and then sighed, shaking her head. She stepped toward him, her gaze soft and loving once more. "You worry too much, brother," she said. "You must remember yourself. Remember to always embrace difficulty with pride and vigor. We are Ashfords, after all. Alexia's eyes widened, her face paling. She turned toward the window overlooking the corridor outside, slender fingers rising anxiously to the choker at her throat. There's someone in the hall. No! Alexia had to be kept safe. No one must touch her. No one. It was Claire Redfield, of course, finally here to fulfill her assignment, to assassinate his beloved. Frantic to protect her, Alfred spun around, searching. There the rifle was laying against Alexia's dressing table, where he'd left it before opening the attic room passage. He strode toward it, feeling her fear as his own, their anxiety shared as if they were one. Alfred reached for the weapon and hesitated, confused. Alexia had insisted on handling the situation. She might be angry again if he interfered, but if something happened to her, if he lost her... The handle of the door rattled suddenly, just as Alexia stepped forward, snatching the rifle up herself. She barely had time to lift it before the door burst open with a crash. It was the first time in almost 15 years that the inner sanctum had been breached, and Alexia was so shocked by the intrusion that she didn't fire right away, not wanting Alfred to be hurt, not wanting to die. The two prisoners had guns, had them pointed directly at her. Alexia collected herself, refusing to be terrorized by two children, who were both staring at her strangely, their peasant faces expressing confusion and surprise. Apparently, they weren't used to audiences with their betters. Use it to your advantage. Keep them off their guard. Miss Redfield and Mr. Burnside, Alexia said, her chin held high, her tone dignified as the Ashford name required. We meet at last. My brother tells me that you've caused quite a lot of trouble. Claire stopped toward her, the barrel of her gun lowering slightly as she searched Alexia's face. Alexia stepped back involuntarily, repelled by her dripping clothes and forward manner, but kept her eye on Claire's weapon. The girl was too intent on her study, as was the young man, who had crowded in behind Claire. Alexia moved back another step. She was cornered, trapped between her dressing table on the foot of her bed, but again it was to her advantage. When they've been lulled into thinking I'm not in danger. You're Alexia Ashford? The boy asked, amazed or awed, his mouth open. I am. She wouldn't be able to tolerate such rudeness for much longer, not from one so far beneath her. Claire nodded slowly, still looking into her eyes boldly, impermanently. Alexia, where's your brother? Alexia turned to Alfred and started, because he was nowhere in the room. He left her to confront these people by herself. No, it can't be. He'd never desert me like this. Movement to her right, but she realized as she turned back that it was only the mirror, and Alfred was looking back at her. It was her face, lips painted and lashes curled, but his hair, his jacket. She raised her right hand to her mouth, shocked, and Alfred did the same, watching her, feeling her astonishment, as if they were one. Alexia screamed, dropping the rifle, forgetting all about the two trespassers as she pushed past them, not caring if they shot her or not. She ran for the door that connected her room to Alfred's, screaming again as she spotted the long blonde wig on the floor, the beautiful gown crumpled next to it. Weeping, she pushed through the door, a revolving panel flinging across Alfred's room. My room. Not sure where she was going as she stumbled through the corridor, running for the stairs. It was over. It was all over. Everything ruined. Everything a lie. Lexi had gone away and never come back, and she was... The twins suddenly knew what had to be done, the answer shining through the spinning blackness of their mind, showing them the way. They reached the stairs and headed down with plans forming, understanding that it was time, that they truly would be together now because it was finally time. But first, they'd destroy it all.
Holy shit.
Steve said, and when he couldn't think of anything else to say, he repeated it. So Alexia was never here, Claire said, wearing the same dumbfounded expression that he suspected on his own face. She walked over and picked up the wig, shaking her head. Do you think she ever existed at all?
Maybe as a kid, Steve said. There was this older guard at the prison who said he'd seen her once, like 20 years ago, back when Alexander Ashford ran things.
For a few seconds they just stared around the room, Steve thinking how Alfred had looked when he'd seen himself in the mirror. It had been so pathetic, he'd almost felt bad for the guy. Thinking all this time that his sister lived here, probably the only person in the world who didn't think he was a total prick, and it turns out he doesn't even have that. Claire shook herself like she had been in a sudden chill and got them back on track. We better look for those keys before one of the twins comes back. She nodded toward the narrow ladder at the head of the bed. It led to an open square in the ceiling. I'm going to look up there. You check around. Steve nodded as Claire disappeared through the open ceiling. He started to open drawers and rifle through them. You wouldn't believe what's up here, Claire called down, just as Steve discovered a drawer full of silky lingerie, panties, and bras, and had a bunch of other stuff he couldn't begin to guess at. Ditto, he called back, wondering what lengths Alfred had gone in order to play Alexia. He decided he really didn't want to know. He heard Claire thumping around overhead as he went to the dressing table and started to dig. A lot of makeup and perfume and jewelry, but no proofs or emblems, not even a house key. Nothing yet, but hey, there's another ladder, Claire shouted. Good thing, Steve thought, finding a box of stationery with little white flowers on the paper. He was getting more nervous about Alfred coming back and wanted to get out of his freaky room of sister psychosis as soon as possible. There was a tiny white card on top of the stationery envelopes. Steve picked it up, noting the strong feminine hand. Dearest Alfred, you are the brave, brilliant soldier ever fighting to reinstate the Ashford name to its former glory. My thoughts are with you always, beloved Alexia. Ick. Steve dropped the card, making a face. Was it just him, or had Alfred created a seriously unnatural relationship with his imagined sister? Yeah, but it wasn't real. It was like they could do anything. Physical. Double ick. Again, Steve decided he'd rather not know. Steve! I think I found them! I'm coming down! Overwhelmed by an instant rush of hope and optimism, Steve grinned, turning towards the ladder, the words music to his ears. No shit! Claire's shapely legs appeared, her voice much cleaner. He could hear the same excitement in her response as quickly as descended. No shit, there was this little... Oh, I guess that's her. No shit, there was this little merry-go-round up there in the attic room above that. Oh, and you gotta check out this dragonfly key. An alarm suddenly started blaring, echoing through the giant house, loud and instant. Claire jumped off the bed, holding 3 proof keys and a slender metal object in her hand. They locked gazes, exchanging a look of confused fear, and Steve realized he could hear the alarm outside, too, with the hollow metallic sound of an announcement being made over a cheap sound system. It sounded like it was being broadcast over the entire island. Before either of them could say a word, a calm voice began speaking through the bleeding sirens, cool and female, the voice of a recorded loop. The self-destruct system has been activated. All personnel evacuate immediately. The self-destruct system has been activated. All personnel... That bastard! Claire spat, and Steve was right there with her, silently cursing the pompous little freak. But only for about 2 seconds. They had to get to that plane. Go! Steve said, scooping up Alfred's rifle and putting his hand on Claire's back, urging her toward the door. Umbrella's Rockford training facility in the Attainment Center, place where Steve had grieved his mother and lost his father, where the last descendant of the Ashford line had quietly gone mad and Umbrella's enemies had unleashed the beginning of the end, was about to go bye-bye, and he didn't particularly want to be around when it did. Claire didn't need any advice on the matter. Together, they hustled through the door and ran, leaving the sad remnants of Alfred's twisted fantasy behind. After triggering the destruct sequence at the common mansion, Alfred and Alexia hurried to the main control room, Alexia taking over to work the complicated console. All around them, lights flashed and the computer droned instructions over the sirens. It was quite the ado, annoying to her but surely terrifying to the assassins. Alexia had an escape plan, a key to the underground room where the VTOL jets were kept, and she had to know that the peasant children would be left behind. Until she was certain they would die, she and Alfred wouldn't leave. Oh, they'll die, she thought, smiling, hoping that they were caught in any of the direct explosions. Better that they should be wounded by flying debris, that they should lie in torment as their lives slowly ebbed away. Or perhaps the island's surviving predators would stalk and kill them, swallowing them down in great bloody chunks. Alexia pulled up the security system cameras for the common mansion and grounds, eager to see Claire and her little knight cowering in fear, or screaming in panic. She saw neither. The mansion was empty, the lights and sounds of imminent danger carrying on uselessly, alerting bare corridors and closed rooms. They might still be in our home, too afraid to leave, desperately hoping that the destruction will bypass them. There. It wouldn't, of course. There was nowhere on this island that wouldn't be affected. Alexia saw them and felt her good humor disappear, her hatred boiling back into rage. The screen showed them at the submarine dock, the boys spinning the wheel. The sky was starting to lighten, shading from deep black to deep blue, setting the moon's pale light defining their sly and furtive scheming. No, there was no chance for them. True, the empty cargo plane was still docked, the bridge raised, but Alfred had thrown the proofs into the sea after the airstrike. They couldn't possibly believe that they had a chance. Except they were in my private rooms. No! Alexia shrieked, pounding her fist on the console, furious. She would not have it, would not. She'd kill them herself, claw their eyes out, tear them up. There's the tyrant, Alfred whispered in her ear. Alexia's rage turned to passion, to exhilaration. Yes, There was the tyrant, still in stasis, and it was intelligent enough to follow directions, provided they were simple, provided one pointed it the right way. "You won't escape," Alexia shouted, laughing, twirling around, enjoying victory. And after a moment, Alfred joined in, unable to deny how deeply, wonderfully satisfying it was going to be. His computer changed its tune and began the final countdown. Their run to the plane was a blur, a mad dash out of the Ashfords' terrible home and down the rain-slick hill to the mansion and down the stairs, down more stairs to the tiny dock where Steve called up the submarine. Every step of the way, the alarms drove them faster, the continuous vocal loop reminding them of the obvious. Just as they were climbing out of the sub, the bland female voice stopped repeating itself and begun a new message. And though the words aren't exactly the same, Claire had sudden vivid memory of Raccoon, of standing on a subway platform as another self-destruct loop had announced that the end was near. "The self-destruct sequence is now active. There are 5 minutes until initial detonation." "Well, that blows," Steve said, the first thing he'd said since they left the private mansion. In spite of her fear that they wouldn't make it in time, in spite of her exhaustion and horrible memories, she knew that she'd be taking away with her. Steve's deadpan utterance struck her as hilarious. "It does blow, doesn't it?" Claire started laughing, and although she tried to put an immediate stop to it, she couldn't quite manage. It seemed that even intimate death couldn't stop the giggles. That or hysteria had turned out to be a lot funnier than she would have expected, and the look on Steve's face wasn't helping. Hysterical or not, she knew they had to move. "Go!" she choked, motioning him forward. Still looking at her as though she'd lost her mind, Steve grabbed her arm and pulled her along with him. After a few stumbling steps and the realization that her laughing fit might kill them both, Claire got a hold of herself. "I'm okay," she said, breathing deep, and Steve let her go, a look of relief crossing his pale face. They ran down some stairs and through the kind of underwater tunnel, and as they reached the door at its end, the computer informed them that another minute had passed, and they only had 4 left. If there had been any chance that she might start laughing again, that killed it. Steve pushed the door open and jogged left, both of them leapfrogging over a trio of dead bodies, all virus carriers, all in umbrella uniforms. Claire thought of Rodrigo suddenly, and her heart twisted. She hoped that he'd be safe where he was, or that he was well enough to get away from the compound, but she couldn't kid herself about his chances. She silently wished him luck and then let go, following Steve through another door. Their journey had ended in a huge, dark, metal-lined cavern, a hangar for seaplanes, and their hope of escape was sitting right in front of them. A smallish cargo plane floating just beneath the grid platform as they were on. Not far to the right, blue pre-dawn light defined the giant gateway that opened into the sea. "Over here," Steve said and hurried toward a small lift at the edge of the platform. One was standing control board. Claire joined him, fumbling the 3 emblem proofs out of her pack. "The self-destruct sequence is now active. There are 3 minutes until initial detonation." The control board on the panel on top with 3 inset hexagonal spaces. Steve grabbed 2 of the proofs together and they pressed all 3 of them home. "Oh man, please, please, please." There was an audible click and the panel's switches lit up, a deep hum coming from the body of the standing machinery. Steve laughed, and Claire suddenly realized he had been holding her breath when she suddenly able to breathe again. "Hang on," Steve said, and swiped his hand over the panel, flipping them all over. With a small jerk, the lift began to lower at an angle as the plane's rounded side door opened, folding down to create a stepladder. Claire felt like it was all happening in slow motion, a kind of unreality to the lift met to the base of the steps, jerking again to a stop. It was hard to believe that it was finally happening, that they were actually going to make it off Umbrella's cursed island. To hell with believing it, just go. They boarded the plane, Steve running forward to get flight ready while Claire quickly checked out the rest of it. A large, mostly empty cargo area constituted by the bulk of the plane, sealed off from the cockpit by a soundproof metal hatch. There weren't any creature comforts beyond a closet with a porta-john behind the pilot's seat, but there was a footlocker at the rear of the cockpit that contained 2 plastic-gallon jugs of water, much to Claire's relief. Though muffled, they could still hear the recording resonating through the hangar as Steve found the controls for the door, the hatch lifting and sealing as the countdown went 2 minutes. Claire hurried to his side, her heart really starting to pound. 2 minutes was nothing. She wanted to help, to ask what she could do, but Steve's full concentration was on the instrument panel. She remembered what he'd said about iffy flying skills, but since she didn't have any at all, she wasn't complaining. The seconds ticked past and she had to force herself not to start babbling nervously, not to do anything that might distract him. The plane's engines had been rumbling, the sound getting steadily louder and higher pitched. Claire's nerves tightening to match, and when the dreaded computer female spoke up again, Claire found herself gripping the backs of Steve's chairs, her knuckles white. There is now 1 minute until detonation. 59, 58, 57. What if it's too complicated? What if you can't do it? Claire thought, fairly certain she was about to explode. 44, 43. Steve straightened abruptly, grabbing a gear shift-looking thing to his right and nudging it forward before placing his hands on the yoke. Engine sounds got much louder, and slowly, very slowly, the plane started to move.
You ready yet?
He asked, a grin in his voice, and Claire nearly collapsed with relief, her knees weak with it. 30, 29, 28. The plane edged forward beneath a low metal bridge, close enough to the door now that she could see the small waves breaking against the metal sliding. There was a loud thump overhead, and as though the bridge had scraped the top of the plane, but they kept moving, slow and steady. 17, 16. As Steve steered into the open water, the countdown reached 10, and then it was too far away to be heard, as the engines got impossibly louder and they picked up speed, the smooth ride turning bumpy as they started to run over the waves. There was just enough light in the sky now for Claire to see the island shore off to the right, rocky and treacherous. There were low cliffs bordering much of Rockford, rising up out of the water like rough fortress walls. Right before Steve started to pull back on the yoke to lift the speeding plane up and away, Claire saw the first of the explosions, the sounds hitting a second later, a series of deep thundering booms that quickly grew distant, dropping off as Steve gently raised them up. As the cargo plane took to the air, giant billows of black smoke rose into the early dawn, casting shadows over the disintegrating compound. Flames were catching everywhere, and though she didn't know the exact layout of what she was looking at, she thought she saw the Ashfords' private home being gutted by fire, the immense orange light rising up behind what was left of the mansion. There were still structures standing, but immense pieces of them were suddenly missing, blown into rubble and dust. Claire took a deep breath and let it out slowly, feeling knotted muscles begin to unclench. It was all over. Another umbrella facility lost because of the scientific integrity they continued to violate, because of a moral vacuum that seemed to be an elemental component of the company's policies. She hoped the tortured, twisted soul of Alfred Ashford had finally found some kind of peace, or whatever it was he truly deserved.
So, where to?
Steve asked casually and drawn back from her wandering thoughts. Claire turned away from the side window, grinning, ready to kiss the pilot. Steve caught her gaze with his, also grinning, and they looked into each other's eyes, the second stretching. It occurred to her for the first time that he wasn't just a kid. No kid would look at her the way he was looking at her now, and in spite of her firm decision not to encourage him, she didn't look away. He was a good-looking guy, definitely, but she spent most of the last 12 hours thinking of him as an obnoxious kid brother. Not exactly easy to get past, even if she wanted to. On the other hand, after what they'd been through together, she also felt very close to him in a way that was solid, strong, an affection that seemed to be perfectly natural and... Claire broke eye contact first, looking away. They'd been free and safe for all of a minute and a half. She wanted to digest that for a little while before moving on. Steve returned his attention to the controls, looking a little flushed, and there was another thump on the roof, like the back of the hangar. "What is that?" Claire asked, looking up as though she actually expected to see something through the metal.
No idea, Steve said, frowning. There's nothing up there, so... Crunch.
The plane seemed to bob in air, and Steve hurried to compensate as Claire instinctively looked behind them. The destructive sound had come from the hold. Main cargo hatch came open. Tapping at the small flashing light on the console, Steve punching another button.
I can't get it to close.
"I'll check it out," Claire said, and at Steve's unhappy expression, she smiled. "You just keep us in the air, okay? I promise not to jump." She turned toward the hold, and as soon as Steve looked away, she casually grabbed the rifle hanging off the back of the co-pilot's chair, the one Alfred had dropped. She still had the semi, but the laser sight on the rifle meant pinpoint accuracy, and since she didn't want to shoot the plane full of holes, the .22 was a better choice. There had been a monster or two on the island, and maybe they ended up with a stowaway, but she didn't want Steve to worry or get involved. They both needed him at the controls. "Whatever it is, I'll have taken care of it," she thought grimly, reaching the door handle. Really, she was probably overreacting some minor malfunction, a loose roof panel and a broken hinge. She opened the door and leaped inside, slamming it behind her before Steve could hear the noise. So much for minor. The entire rear of the hold was gone, the hatch torn away, clouds and sky whipping past at incredible speed. Confused, Claire took a single step forward and saw what the problem was. Mr. X, she thought wildly, remembering the monstrous thing in Raccoon, the relentless pursuer in the long dark coat, but the hulking creature straddling at the hydraulic track wasn't the same. It was humanoid, giant-sized and hairless like the X-monster, its flesh similar and almost metallic dark gray, but it was also taller and more muscular, built like an 8-foot-tall bodybuilder, its shoulders impossibly broad, abdomen rippled with muscle. It was a sexless rounded hump in its groin, and the hands weren't human hands, were far more lethal. Its left fist was a metal spiked mace, bigger than her entire head. The right hand had a hybrid of flesh and curving knives, 2 of them at least a foot long. And it's not wearing a coat, she thought randomly as the monster turned its cataract white eyes to look at her before throwing its head back and roaring, an explosive howl of bloodlust and fury. Terrified but determined, Claire raised her suddenly pathetic weapon as the creature started for her. Put the red dot on its right unicolor eye. She squeezed the trigger and heard the dry click of an empty chamber, deafeningly loud even over the raging winds that spun past the damaged plane. Ooh. Pretty crazy. We're at the tyrant fight. Yeah, I appreciated the explanation behind the Crow Room puzzle and the Umbrella Conspiracy. Exactly. Like, when you, like, it's, like, really cool and interesting to actually hear, like, how they work out in their head that they're solving the puzzle and solve it. But, yeah, not much puzzle going on in this one. I hate those AI 80s anime videos. Like, how can you replicate a cell drawing look with digital paint methods? Too much AI generated Ghibli crap, too. Yep, it's awful. It's so awful. I'm glad this sequence is from Astrid's point of view. Pretty cool, actually. Yeah, it was cool, like... It's cool, like, reading, like, the breakdown of his psyche like that. It's cool that she thought about him during the self-destruct. How he found the strength to get the... If he found the strength to get underground is crazy. Yeah, because, like, it's all blowing up, and she's just like, Rodrigo, the one of the best Resident Evil characters that's severely underappreciated, and they didn't put in the Chronicles games for some reason. I'm still mad about that. That's gonna be my excuse why I didn't play them. There's no Rodrigo. They took Rodrigo out. Can't play that. It has nothing to do with the Charlottes. It's just because Rodrigo's not in it. But yeah. So I want to get through this next chapter and then I'll probably stop. But I want to get through the fight at least. It's not too long, honestly. It's really only a few pages. Like 5. So. But I do think it's interesting that she recognized it as a tyrant. That was kind of cool. She's like, it's like the X creature, just not wearing a coat. It's bigger, more muscular, and it's got weird hands. But it's definitely one of those creatures. It was like, it's cool to see. So. Alright, well, I say we just keep going. There wasn't a curse word strong enough to accurately express her dismay. Claire instantly dropped the useless weapon and ran, dodging to the right, not wanting to end up trapped in the corner, unable to believe that she hadn't thought to check the goddamn weapon. There were 6 or 7 crates stacked against the wall near the cockpit door, but no cover there. On either side, the thing would have her penned in. Go, go, go! As she scurried along the right wall, the lumbering creature slowly turning to follow. She grabbed the semi from under her belt and flicked the safety off by feel, afraid to look away from it. It stumped forward her on a tree trunk legs, eerily focused on her every step. The cargo hold wasn't all that big, maybe 35 feet long and 12 feet wide. Too soon she was at the rear of the plane, icy air suddenly pulling at her, working to suck her out into the clouds. Crouching, trying not to think about a misstep, Claire darted across the open space and reached the other wall, grabbing at a raised ridge of metal with trembling fingers. The creature was still almost 20 feet away. Claire held onto the wall, waiting for it to draw closer before running again. At least it was slow. There was that much. But she had to come up with something. She couldn't keep going around in circles. She was watching the creature and could see it clearly. But what happened next was like some optical illusion. It dropped its silvery head slightly. It was suddenly 5 feet away. The distance closed in a fraction of a second. It was bringing its right arm down, parting the air with an audible whoosh, knives flashing. Claire didn't think. She moved. Her stomach suddenly in her throat, her own action to blur to herself. For a split second, she was only a body, ducking and sprinting, and then she was on the other side of the plane, all the way up to the stacked crates, looking back as the creature slowly turned. Oh, shit on this. The plane would survive a few holes. She opened fire, sent 8 9mm rounds in a tight group right at the center of its chest, and all of them hit. She saw the black-rimmed holes open up near where its heart would have been if it was human. No blood, but moist, dark tissue was exposed, forming spongy lumps around the wounds. The creature stopped in its tracks and started again in about 2 seconds, one slow step after another, its focus unchanged. A stab of panic hit her. Gotta get out of here, it's going to kill me. Get Steve another gun, maybe? No, she couldn't. And it wouldn't help. It could only make things worse. Mr. X had been programmed for a single purpose, to obtain a virus sample. She suspected that this creature was after her specifically, and if she left the hold, the creature would just tear through the hatch, killing her and Steve. At least this way he might have a chance. And the 9mm was the heaviest firepower on the board. If it could take 8 rounds in the chest, another gun wasn't going to make a difference.
Need the BOW gas rounds. Come on. S.D. Perry clearly doesn't know what she's doing in Code Veronica. Try for a headshot like the one-armed monster. She could try, but she had the feeling that something that didn't bleed probably wouldn't go blind either. Its eyes were strange. Perhaps they weren't even used for sight. And there was also the fact that they were on a moving plane, one that shook and wavered. Without a scope, how was she supposed to hit a target? All that passed through her mind in about a second, and then she was moving again, edging towards the back of the plane once more, afraid to run, afraid to stand still, wondering how long she had before it ran at her again, and what she would do then. And it lowered its head like it had done before, and again Claire's body reacted, but an idea was forming too. She pushed away from the wall and ran toward it, angling her path. If this doesn't work, I'm dead. And she felt the chill of its strange flesh as it rocketed past her. It was so close that she could smell its rotten meat smell, and they were on opposite ends of the open space, and it was slowly mechanically turning around. It had worked, but barely. If it had been an inch closer, if she had been a half a step slower, it would have already be over. Guns didn't work. She couldn't leave, so the creature had to go. But how? The airstream at the hold's open and was strong, but if she could duck past it, no way it would nab the weighty monstrosity. She had to knock it off balance, maybe bait it to the opening and trip it up somehow. She wasn't strong enough to push it. Think, damn it. It was starting toward her again, 1 step, 2. She looked away long enough to scan the floor near the opening, looking for something it might stumble over. Maybe the hydraulic track? The hydraulic track! Used to push heavy crates to the rear of the plane to be unloaded. In fact, 2 of the empty crates were sitting on a metal platform at the start of the track, just a few steps from the door to the cockpit. The controls were set into the outer wall right in front of the door. Too slow, there's no way. Except it was slow because it carried a heavy load. There was only an empty container or 2 on the platform. How fast would it go then? She had to get to the controls, had to see. There was a blur of movement, and then the spiked mace was coming around, ripping toward the side of her head. Claire jumped forward, instinctively sidestepped, but not quite fast enough. The spikes didn't get her, but his powerful forearm did, bashing painfully into her ear, knocking her off her feet. Instantly, the creature crouched and brought its right arm down, but she was already in motion, rolling the second she hit the floor. The hand blades hit the deck and sparks flew, the creature howling in rage as Claire sprang to her feet, not trying to notice her throbbing ear or the tiny black dots that swarmed at the edges of her vision. She ran for the hydraulic controls instead. As the creature rose to its feet, its movement mechanical again, as emotionless that it had been furious only seconds before. A few running steps and she was looking down at a simple control panel. Power switch, a dial for entering approximate weight, buttons for back and forth, a tiny readout screen, and emergency shutoff. Claire hit the power switch, twisting the weight dial to the maximum limit, just under 3 tons. She shot a look at the creature, still at a safe distance, and saw there was only a step or 2 from being in the direct path of the platform. Her hand hovered over the blue switch that would move it forward, and that should send it bulleting down with a hold at incredible speed. With only a few pounds of empty container, there were 3 tons was expected. It would mow the creature down like a blade of grass. Almost. Now! When the creature was standing almost directly on the track, Claire punched the button, and nothing happened. Nothing at all. Shit! She fumbled for the power switch again. Maybe she hadn't turned it on. She saw that it was on the little readout screen and groaned aloud. The simple instructions read, charging for load, wait for tone. Good God, how long will that be? The creature was still 20 feet away, walking almost directly along the track. She might not get a better shot at it, because another blow could very well mean her death. But if she stayed where she was and the creature got to her before the platform was charged, she'd be trapped between the wall and the storage crates. It would bludgeon her into a pulp against the cockpit door. Better run for it, better to stay put. Claire hesitated a touch too long, and the creature was in motion again. It swept toward her like a natural disaster, and it was too late. Not even time to turn around and flee into the cockpit. Ping! And it brought its spiked hand down just as Claire slammed the switch. Her eyes squeezed closed, sure that the world was about to disappear in a blizzard of pain. As the creature shot away from her, roaring, the empty crates lifting off its feet, powering it away. Before she could begin to accept the plan was working, the creature used one of its incredible bursts of speed and got in front of the barreling container, just enough to get some leverage to push against it. But Claire didn't wait to see which force was greater. She opened fire again, 2-3 bullets hitting it in the head, bouncing harmlessly off its armored skull, but distracting it too. The creature struggled another half a second, and then it and the 2 crates were gone, plunging into the dusky sky. Claire started out the passing stream of atmosphere for a time, knowing that she should feel limp with relief, that she'd killed the monster as she survived another umbrella disaster, that they were finally safe. But she was simply wrung out, and any possibility for strong emotion having flown out the back along with Mr. X's big brother. Please let it be over, she said softly, and then turned and opened the door back into the cockpit. As she hopped the 2 steps up to the pilot area, Steve glanced back at her, frowning.
What happened? Is everything okay?
Claire nodded, flopping down in the seat next to him. Absolutely beat. Yeah, score 1 more for the good guys. Oh, the rear cargo hatch is gone.
Are you kidding?
Steve asked. Nope, Claire said and yawned widely, suddenly overwhelmed with fatigue. Hey, I'm going to rest my eyes for a minute. If I fall asleep, wake me up in 5, okay?
Sure,
Steve said, still looking confused.
The hatch is gone?
Claire didn't answer him, the dark already rushing up to claim her, her body melting into the seat. And Steve was shaking her, repeating her name over and over again.
Claire! Claire!
Yeah? She mumbled, sure she hadn't slept as she cracked her eyes open, wondering why Steve would want to torture her like this, until she saw the expression, and a bolt of alarm jolted her awake. What is it? She asked, sitting up straight. Steve looked really worried.
Like a minute ago, we changed direction and the controls suddenly locked down, he said. I don't know what it is, but there's no radio, but everything else is still working fine. Except I can't steer or alter the altitude or speed. It's like it's stuck on autopilot.
Before she could say a word, there was a crackling static sound from the small video monitor mounted close to the ceiling of the cockpit, one Claire hadn't noticed before. Flickering distortion lines spread out across the screen, but the picture, when it came in, was clear enough. Alfred. He was also flying, it seemed, belted in the front seat of a 2-man fighter jet, or something similar. He still had smears of makeup on his face, his eyes rimmed in black, and when he spoke, it was in Alexia's voice. My apologies, he purred, but I can't let you escape now. It seems you have eluded another of my playthings. Naughty, naughty.
Cross-dressing freak,
Steve snapped, but Alfred either didn't hear him or didn't care. Enjoy the ride, Alfred said, giggling, and with a final buzz of static, the screen went blank. Claire stared at Steve, who stared back helplessly, and when they both looked out over the sea of clouds, watching silently as the first shafts of sunlight broke. Steve was dreaming about his father when he started to awake suddenly, afraid for some reason, the dream slipping past even as he remembered where he was. Claire made a soft, sleepy sound in the back of her throat and nuzzled closer, her head against his left shoulder, her breath warm against his chest. Oh, Steve thought, afraid to move, not wanting to wake her up. They'd fallen asleep side by side, leaning against the cockpit wall, and he had apparently moved closer together at some point. He had no idea what time it was or how long they'd slept, but they were still in the air, muted sunlight still coming in through the windows. They talked for a while after Alfred had taken control of the plane, but not about what they were going to do at the end of their hijacked ride. Claire had remarked that since they couldn't do anything about it, there was no point in worrying. Instead, they'd eaten, and Claire had nabbed a few packs of vending machine nuts for which Steve would be internally grateful, and done their best to wash up a little using the bottled water, and then talked. Really talked. She told him about going to Raccoon City to find Chris and everything that had happened there and what she knew about Umbrella and the Trent spy guy. And she told him a lot of other stuff too. She was in college, 2 years older than him, and she rode a motorcycle but was probably going to give it up because of how dangerous it was. She liked to dance, so she liked dance music, but she also liked grunge. She thought politics were mostly boring, and cheeseburgers were her favorite food. She was totally incredibly cool, the coolest girl he'd ever met. And even better, she'd actually been interested in what he had to say. She laughed a lot at his jokes and thought it was cool. Different pages stuff. That he ran track, and when he talked about some of his parents, she'd listen without getting all pushy. She's so smart and beautiful. He looked down at her, her tousled hair and long lashes, his heart pounding even though he was trying to relax. She moved again, shifting in her sleep, her head tilting back a little, and her slightly parted lips were suddenly close enough for him to kiss. All he had to do was tip his face down a few inches, and he wanted to so bad that he actually started to do it, lowering his mouth towards hers. She murmured, still totally asleep, and he stopped, pulling back, his heart beating even faster. He totally wanted to, but not like that. Not if she didn't want him to. He thought she did, but she also told him a little about her friend Leon, too, and he wasn't so sure that they were just friends. Feeling tortured, having her so close but not his, he was relieved that when she strolled away from him a few seconds later. He stood up, stretching stiff legs, and walked to the front of the plane, wondering if the reserve fuel tank had been tapped yet. The thought of dealing with those crazy Ashford's assholes once again drying up the last of his positive feelings. He'd hoped that Claire would sleep a while longer. She'd been so tired. Until he saw what was outside, and read the heading, and realized that their altitude had dropped considerably. The plane was starting to pitch some, bucking, and no wonder. On the map reader next to the compass was an approximate latitude-longitude for their position.
Claire, wake up. You gotta see this.
A few seconds later, she was at his side, rubbing her eyes, which widened considerably when she looked out the window. There was a near blizzard of ice and snow pouring down, extending as far as they could see.
We're over in the Antarctic,
Steve said. Is in the South Pole? Claire asked, incredulous. She grabbed the back of the co-pilot seat as the plane roller coastered. Penguins and killer whales, all that?
I don't know about the wildlife, but we're definitely a latitude of 82.17 south, Steve said. Definitely the bottom of the world, and I'm not positive, but I think we're coming in for a landing. We're slowing down anyway.
Maybe Alfred's plan was to drop them in the middle of nowhere and let them freeze to death. Not flashy, but it would certainly do the trick. Steve wished he could get his bare hands on the guy for just a minute. Just one. He wasn't much of a fighter, but Alfred would melt like a cream puff. We must be headed for that, Claire said, pointing right, and Steve squinted, barely able to see through the storm. Then he saw the other planes, and the long, low buildings that she had spotted only a few minutes away.
You think it's one of umbrellas?
Steve asked, knowing before she nodded that it had to be. Where else? The plane's nose continued to dip down, carrying them into whatever Alfred had in mind. But Steve was actually a little relieved. Meeting up with Umbrella again sucked, of course, but at least someone else would be in charge, and not every Umbrella employee was shrink-wrapped as Alfred. He couldn't imagine that that everyone would drop what they were doing to kiss Alfred's ass either. Maybe he and Claire could finally have someone to bargain with or bribe somehow. They were closing in for the first pass, with the ride getting squirrely, the wings probably heavy with ice, when Steve realized that they were way too low. Too low and too fast. The landing gear had dropped at some point, but there was no way they could land at their speed and altitude. Pull up, Steve said, watching the buildings get big too quickly. Feeling the prickles of sweat breaking out all over, he slid into the pilot's chair, grabbing the yoke and pulling back, and nothing happened.
Oh, man. Belt up, we're going to crash,
Steve shouted, grabbing for his own belt as Claire jumped into her seat, the buckle snapping shut just as they touched down. An alarm started shrieking as the landing gear crumpled and tore away, the plane's belly slamming into the ground. The cabin bounced wildly, the seat belts the only thing keeping them from hitting the roof. Claire let out a yelp as the wave of snow crashed into the windshield, and there was a giant metal screech behind them as the tail or wing ripped away. And enough of the churning snowpack fell away from the glass for them to see the building in front of them, and then out of the control plane sliding for it, the smoke coming from nowhere. They were going to hit in... End of the chapter. See, so that's where I wanted to get, because I'm like, now everywhere we read from here on out is at the Antarctic facility. So it's a great stopping point. Only because my throat is kind of killing me. So, this is not working out too well. I really wanted to get through a lot more of this, but... honestly, the way we read this, it ended up being perfectly in thirds. Look at that. This is the, like, we read this part in the beginning. We read this middle part today. And then we got this end part. So, like, we perfectly did 3 parts. Just like with the last one. Isn't that crazy? I just noticed that. That's cool. We broke the book up in thirds. That's awesome. Okay. "8-foot-tall bodybuilder." I like that description of the tyrant's body. Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? Tyrant Jones time. That's right. You remember that was Tyrant Jones originally. Like obviously we're saying the giant from Indiana Jones was, but like that's like his spirit, you know, like they're like he's both of them. But like that was the tyrant that I used to make the Tyrant Jones picture. "I can be your little Canada Leon." That's Jesus Christ. Little Canada Leon is crazy. Awesome. Yeah, I agree. It's perfect the way it got split up. So yeah, I mean, it's almost 9. By the time I'm done yapping at the end of stream, it'll be 9 anyway. And that's a good book stream for me anyway. So, all good. I did like how the chapters were broken up there. They weren't as like unforgiving as the first segments of it, where it was like it's like it was only like a couple chapters or something, like a few chapters, because they're just so long. It's nice when I get like shorter chapters, like a bunch of them, so that way I can have like little breaks in between. Especially today with the way my throat's killing me. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna get some honey for sure. With that being said, though, let's go to the end of stream screen. I enjoy this book more and more the further we get in. Exactly, we haven't even got to Chris yet. Like, think about that. We haven't even seen Chris. Chris MF in Redfield. Our boy. He's gonna be moonwalking over the Bandersnatches. So, yeah. Them poison hunters, he's gonna moonwalk right over them. Imagine the people that didn't see, like, that didn't watch my Code Veronica streams, and they don't know about the Chris moonwalk. So sad. So sad indeed. But yeah, it is like my favorite of the books, so really cool. Really happy to read it for you guys. But yeah, we got a good chunk of it done today, so we're good. We're good. Great stopping point. 2.5 hours, not bad. I think the first one was like a little under 2 hours, so we got cut early. Here, I'll actually look real quick. Because I'm curious now. So... yeah, it looks like all the parts average out to be 2.5 hours when we read. So not bad at all. It's average for a reading session. That makes me feel a lot better, honestly. To be honest, he does look a little like a little Canada Leon Dark Side Chronicles. I wanted to know what Dark Side Chronicles Rodrigo would look like. And Capcom took that from me. Capcom, if you're out there, just know. I know what you did. I know what you took from us. And if you don't have a better part for Rodrigo in the Code Veronica remake, I'm coming for you. Consider that a threat. You just like, it's like the Code Veronica remake comes out, we play through it, and then like a week or two later, you see like a news article or something, and it's like, and it's just like, pink-haired streamer Sabrina Wesker crashes into like Capcom facility and assassinates half of the staff. Or something. No, I'm not crazy like that, but that's like the energy that I want for Rodrigo. Bro is the best part of this Code Veronica. And it's like, ugh. These people that put Code Veronica on the bottom of the tier list just don't understand. I bet they're Jill likers too. Ugh. Ugh, Jill. Ugh. It like, it feels gross. Like, it feels like I have phlegm in my throat just like saying her name. Ugh. Who bombed Capcom's HQ? Yeah, exactly. When the Code Veronica remake comes out, you'll see. You'll see. They better do my boy justice, because I know what they did in Chronicles. And I'll never forgive them. Yeah, come on, come watch the live readings of the Code Veronica book. You're gonna love it, bro. Trust me. Like half of the stream, this girl was complaining about Rodrigo. It's like peak stream, honestly. Peak entertainment. You ever seen someone just rattle on about a random side character in Code Veronica? Well, you're in store for this. I'm just being silly, but anyways, so if you're not in the Discord, I highly recommend you check it out. We had a wonderful time yesterday playing some Silent Hill 2 remake. I think I am... Where am I at right now? I got through the apartments. I got through the park. I'm in the hospital. That's right. I'm like almost done with the hospital. I got like... I got jump scared by Pyramid Head cause like I was on the rooftop and I was like, okay, well, this is gonna be like I'm looking around, I'm like, wait, there's some shotgun ammo over here. There's like a medicine drink over here. Like, okay, cool. Just like kind of getting a plot of the area, looking around. And then I'm like, all right, there's like a building thing here with double doors. And I found out that in this game, double doors usually signify something. So I'm like, that's probably where they want me to go. So I'll go check, make sure there's not like a key item or something in that building, and then come out and loot the rooftop. So I go in there, and it's just a diary. And I'm like, I'm sitting there looking around, like, I had James has his little gun. He's like pointing it so I can like zoom in and look around. And like, I'm like, all right, so there's like, this looks like where like that broken elevator is. So like, is there no way for me to like get it unstuck or something? Like, I'm looking around. I'm like, after like a minute or two, I just give up. I'm like, well, there's probably nothing we can do in here. It was just for the diary. Let me go loot the rooftop. So I turn around, and as I turn around, I just see Pyramid Head standing right behind me. And then it starts like the cutscene of him like punching James through the like elevator shaft, and I was like it scared the crap out of me. I just turn around and he's just standing there, just like, whoa, okay. Was not expecting that. And then, he punches you down, you get down into like the 3rd floor, and then you're just like, oh, okay, no big deal. I'll just go back up to the rooftop and like I'll go back up to the rooftop and loot it real quick. No big deal. Like, it's not like the stairs aren't right there. So I come around, unlock the door, come up to like to go up the staircase, and then as I go up the staircase, I hear like a locking noise, and then the door is closed, and I can't open it. And I'm like, this dude just really locked me out of the rooftop with all that loot. You know how much ammo I missed up there? Oh, I'm so angry. I'm still angry about that. I should have just looted the rooftop before going in the building. But I didn't think it was gonna Anyway, that was my frustration, some of the fun we've had in the after show lately. So, yeah, highly recommend you guys check it out. These book readings are a cool experience. To think we would hear RE Legends be narrated by Wesker's Princess.
Aww.
You know what? That's top comment. Let me pin that. Thank you, 263. That's really kind of you. I don't know if like my neighbors are having like a party or something, but like there's been so many cars coming down the street and like just this past like 5 minutes. And to be fair, like it's not like I have like a neighborhood where it has like 2 exits so people like don't drive through it to like get somewhere. Like it's like, you know, there's only the one exit. So like if you're coming in here, you're coming in here type deal. And yeah, it's just kind of crazy because like just seeing all the cars go by, it's like, where are they all going? Like there must be someone having a party or something on a Wednesday afternoon at 9 p.m. All right, whatever. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. So yeah, we have a ton of fun in the after show, and we might play more Silent Hill 2 remake, but I feel like I want to yap, so we might yap for a little bit too. Pretty much the after show is going to be fun. You guys should be there. The link is in the description and on my page, so be there. It takes place after every stream. Like I almost immediately go into the Discord, so yeah, just stream ends. You want some more Sabrina Wesker time, just head on over to Discord. Pretty cool. We got some new people who joined yesterday, and we got Matt in the Discord today, so pretty cool, you know, growing a little community. It's nice to see you guys there, talk to you guys, and get to know my audience a little better. It makes me happy, so it's cool getting to interact with the people who I entertain multiple days a week, you know? You guys support me, and I care about you guys too. So thank you. Thank you for everything, is I guess what I'm trying to say. So Tuesday we will be back with more RE6. We'll probably play a little bit longer than normal to even out the shorter RE6 stream yesterday, because let's be honest, if we don't start to getting some big chunks of this game out of the way, I'm gonna be streaming RE6 for like 2 months straight. It's just too long of a game. I'm getting annoyed with it at this point. I'm the type of person where like I like jumping between games. Like I'll hyper focus on a game for like a week or two, and then like jump to something else and just keep going back and forth with games. And so when I'm stuck playing the same game for so long, I feel like burnt out on it. But regardless, it's still really fun getting to play, like especially co-op with Puck. A lot of unique experiences, honestly. And RE6 is just an amazing co-op game. It really is. Like there's nothing else, like you can't take that away from it. It's a great co-op experience. So even if I'm burnt out on the game, I still find joy in like having those moments and stuff like that. So yeah. RE6 in a nutshell, right? Put the Code Veronica book back with the others. See, I would like to get like maybe another shelf or maybe a small bookshelf or something to go here underneath the bat, and then maybe I put more of my manga and stuff like that in there, because I know I like there's a lot of like manga and anime references on my channel and stuff like that, especially with some of the older content, and it's like I have so many like manga and books. It'd be cool to like show a little bit of that side of my personality, so might look into that. But for now, I got them all like out of camera view from here down. To be fair, it's just like up here, like out of view, I have a bunch of like PC hardware, like processors, graphics cards, stuff like that.
So, yeah.
It'd be cool to show something other than figures and some games. I don't know why I turned that way. Figures and games. There is a lot more. And like honestly, I would like to explore a lot more forms of content as well. But anyway, I'm yapping. Let me get this over with. I'll say goodnight to you guys. And I'll see you in the Discord.
There we go.
Well, thank you all. I had a wonderful night. I hope you guys did too. I love you all. Have a wonderful night. See you guys in Discord.
Bye-bye.